So moved.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The approval of the Board of Supervisors and the Broadband Authority Board joint meeting is now approved. We will now have invocation and pledge of allegiance, which will be led by Mr. Tom Martin.
Let's pray together. Our Father, we come before you as your humble servants. Lord, we thank you that we live in a community where we still have a philosophy of neighbor helping neighbor. Lord, where we still respect and get along with each other. Father, I just pray a blessing on each of our citizens. Father, I pray for all of our county staff, our law enforcement, fire and EMS. Father, I pray that you will bless these proceedings, that you will give this board wisdom to do things that are in the best interest of the county. And Father, we ask these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Attention, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. We will now open up the meeting for citizen comments. Is there anyone here wishing to speak? Oh, gentleman here in the back. Need you to come forward and give us your name and your address, please.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. My name is Caleb Martin. My address is 1511 Boxwood Farm Road. I had sent Administrator Rogers and Supervisor Martin a copy of a letter I wanted to read real quick with the names of some people in regards to the broadband. I have a copy if everybody wants one, or I can just give a copy at the end. That's all right.
I'll take one. and make
Slide
sure.
copy.
Okay.
Campbell, if you could please stay close to the microphone so we keep on, usually can hear.
Yes, sir. All right. Dear Board of Supervisors, my name is Caleb Martin. Like I said, I live at 1511 Boxwood Farm Road. I'm writing this in response to the broadband proposals submitted by Firefly Fiber, SCS Broadband, and Zytel LLC. I've read through each proposal and have a few comments and recommendations from a few community members. First, I want to start with the recommendation for high-speed internet from the FCC states, high-speed broadband is considered 25 megabits per second download with a consistent 3 megabits per second upload. Also on their website, in response to COVID-19, they list usage for certain members of a household or certain things that take broadband. Student uses typically between 5 to 25 megabits per second going schooling online. Telecommuting is 5 to 25 megabits per second. And then streaming in HD quality for personal use would be 5 to 8 megabits per second. As for video teleconferencing is 6 megabits per second and a recommended download speed of 10 megabits per second for downloading documents. These are just a few things that the internet is being used for in a residential home post-COVID-19. A greater stress is being put on the data capacity of broadband providers and the consumer. I have concerns with the SCS ability proposal to provide adequate speed by the December 30th deadline due to their speeds that are listed on their website. They currently offer anywhere from 2, 5, 7, 10, and 15 megabits per second download speed on their Wi-Fi plan. And on their LTE plans, they offer 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. Those range from $40 to $120 based on the plan that you choose. Excuse me. I had SCS broadband from September of 2017 to approximately March or April of 2018. During that time, they were helpful when I had issues. I was told I could receive approximately 5 megabits per second. They do not guarantee their speeds, but I would average between about 2 and 5 megabits per second during non-peak hours and around 1 to 2 megabits per second during peak hours. The county spending $300,000 on the project is lower than the other two proposals, but I fear that from people I've spoken to in the community that those speeds won't be adequate or necessarily meet the demands of the amount that a home may need. It also requires in their proposal, they state they allow to build fiber out where allowed, but that also is asking for money that may not be available that we have right now. I want to acknowledge the Firefly has proposed a plan to reach over 250 homes in the New Glasgow Boxwood area. Their base plan is $500,000 from the county as long as their contribution. But it will build off the network that already runs down along the end of Boxwood Farm in New Glasgow with this co-ops lines that are being installed. This proposal will connect part of the county that does not have access to any wired internet service. I have had fiber broadband when I lived in Chesterfield County, Virginia for over 2 years, and when I had fiber, I did not lose connection once or experience any speeds below what I paid for. The stress of a fiber optic system in a city or densely populated area is much more strenuous than what Firefly would be dealing with, where they state in the proposal they see at peak hours about 12 gigabits per second of use. I know that the County Board of Supervisors and Administration are worried about a monopoly. I say those who are under Comcast are under monopoly, and they do have a right to complain based on the changes by Comcast, but they also have a hardline dedicated internet service. The north end of Amherst must pay higher fees for satellite or fixed wireless internet. I currently have Finisky through Scientech Systems, which works well, but it's not always consistent. And I pay roughly $186 a month for 30 megabits per second. Firefly offers a $49.99 plan for 100 megabits per second down and 100 megabits per second up. If you look at the FCC guidelines for what internet uses, that covers all things if you have more than 1 or 2 people working on schooling and telecommuting at the same time. This is in relation to the changes that SCS has in relation to the charges, but does not come close to the speed that Firefly offers. They also offer an $89.99 plan for 1 gigabit per second. This is 10 times the speed of the $49 plan at a $40 difference. It also meets the need of a more reliable connection of bandwidth for multiple users. The proposal also offers a phone system for competition with Verizon's system. And as a first responder, I know that the Verizon lines are outdated and they go out from time to time when we get 911 calls with static lines. My final comments will be on the Zytel LLC proposal. I do not know much about Zytel other than what is in the proposal and a brief conversation I had with a representative from the company yesterday. I like what the proposal does is it bridges the gap for the Clifford area as well as the Boxwood Toy Town area. Like what the proposal does as it bridges the gap. Instead of waiting on grant money, they're able to do all this area compared to Firefly's proposal where it covers a certain section of Boxwood and Toy Town as to where Firefly has adopted an option A and option B in their proposal. This also covers 600 plus homes in their initial build out that their proposal puts forth. And if you assume that there's at least 2 residents per home, you have over 1,200 residents in the county, as well as businesses being serviced by a hardline dedicated fiber to home connection. It also give options if Firefly does not receive the CARES Act funding and they decided to expand in the future, that you could avoid a monopoly by having 2 separate providers in the area. When I spoke to the representative yesterday, their plan states that they have a $50 plan for 50 megabits per second with 50 megabits per second up and down, as well as a $99 plan. But when I spoke to the representative yesterday, he stated that they would be changing that to match Firefly's of $49.99 for 100 megabits per second up and down, and $89.99 for 1 gigabit per second up and down. In conclusion, I know the county has set aside $500,000 for the CARES Act at the last Board of Supervisors meeting. I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for doing that and taking a dedication to broadband in an underserved area of the county. I ask that the Board of Supervisors closely look at the Zytel proposal as it bridges the gap between Clifford and the Toy Town area where there is no hardline internet. But I also ask that if they choose to not go with Zytel, that they carefully look at Firefly with the base option, as well as including either option A or option B to service more people. In conclusion, I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for your time and for taking this upon yourselves to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak during citizens' comment?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I have a letter from the Chamber of Commerce that they asked to be read during the citizen comment period.
Please proceed.
Dear members of the board, while COVID-19 has not brought many positives to our county, it has given us a gift, a financial gift that could continue to cultivate in this county for years to come. We are writing to you today on behalf of our businesses and the children of Amherst County, urging you to use this gift in the form of CARES Act funding to provide and or improve the internet situation within Amherst County. Over the past 6 months, we have seen a spotlight shined on the discrepancies between urban and rural areas in terms of equitable access to internet solutions. The need for reliable internet access has never been greater. Our children need these solutions to access their education. Our businesses need these solutions to survive. We as a community need both. We have deemed ourselves a business-friendly county. We recently surveyed our members on their providers' speeds, satisfaction, and accessibility at their locations. We had 30 businesses respond, and 56% were, quote, satisfied with their access to reliable internet. Of the 16 that responded they were satisfied, their locations were Madison Heights and the town of Amherst. Outside of these 2 localities, sometimes even by a mile or 2, the situation is drastically different. One business owner responded, quote, my only options is a hotspot on my phone or a hotspot device. I tried to get SCS Broadband because the county was working with them a few years ago, but had a very weak signal. They wouldn't even install. I run a business out of my home building websites. Internet is vital to my business. I would gladly pay for a fiber connection like they have other places. I would love to work from home 100%, but often have to drive to the library, which is closed now due to COVID, close quote. This is not conducive to being business friendly. We must do what we can to provide reliable, affordable solutions for our current businesses and those who are eyeing Amherst County for their future endeavors. As our member stated in the above quotation, the internet is vital. It is vital to our businesses. It is vital to our schools. It is vital to keep our community thriving. Affordable access is just as important as electricity and running water. We have an unprecedented gift to use the funds that were given to us to rectify the current situation. This will come back to us tenfold. This will attract businesses, those looking to relocate their families, and that will ensure the future of our beloved county. Respectfully, Sabrina Kennan, President, Amherst County Chamber of Commerce. Katie Mayo, Director, Amherst County Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. All right, we will now close the citizens' comment portion of the meeting, move on to the consent agenda. Actually, those are meetings from the Board of Supervisors, so we've got them in two places. So we'll put those under the consent agenda following. Does that work for you, Mr. Rogers?
Well, as I understand, these are the minutes from our past broadband.
If you look at it, it's the board meeting.
Did we attach the wrong ones? Regina?
I have the ones,
Yes?
I have the ones for the last meetings.
The last broadband.
Yes, I have them in here.
That's what's attached there.
All right, so, the minutes from August the 4th. Is there a motion to approve? Motion on the floor by Ms. Moore, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Minutes are now approved. And we'll move on to the meat of this meeting, which is the selection of the CARES Act. Thank you.
Well,
All right, well, yeah, while we're waiting for them to pick up, you want to go ahead and proceed, David?
Hi, this is Jessica, 860-209-0987. We
just wait for her. If she calls, if she doesn't, she won't be on there, I guess.
All right.
Okay, well, thank you. We've been in the process of performing an expedited procurement process for Amherst County broadband expansion in the county. On August 13th, a request for proposals was issued, and with a due date of August 24th. During that time, we had 24 prospective proposers request the RFP. We had 3 responses, and those have been provided to you. We had an evaluation process performed, which included members of the school administration, county administration, and our consultant lit communities. That recommendation document has just been completed and just handed out to you. We could have gotten it sooner if we could have had it available. But basically the recommendation is to award a contract to Central Virginia Electric Co-op for what we are referring to as their base proposal. That was the proposal which responded to the criteria we had in our RFP. At the time, we were in discussions with Hvac. A question was asked to them, what additional work could they perform in the county that would serve underserved or unserved citizens by the end of this December? And they provided an additional proposal for 2 different areas of the county. And those are described with maps in this document that we gave you. However, today, the recommendation is that you authorize contract award for the base proposal. If you desire that we pursue either of these optional proposals, a separate procurement process will need to be performed. If you've had any questions or discussions about that, that's where we are.
So could I lead you through their proposal? If you
Please.
would, please. Okay, so on the first page, you can see the criteria that we use to select which proposals that we would follow. Those are the big bullets there. And then down below, as you see A, B, C, and it goes on to the next page through D and through H, those are the scoring criteria that we use as we evaluated the proposal. So those are the things that we looked at. And so Lit Community's recommendation that we contract for the CVAC base proposal. If you look at the first map in the package, it's on page 3. That's the area in blue. Okay, and it's a bit disjointed because, you know, that they're already in the area and this is where they can connect. And this is how the areas that they can connect to. And of course they can connect to much more, but the challenge that we gave everyone was they had to be installed by 30 December and they had to, we were trying to stay within $500,000 because that's what the board had given us. They believe that they can do more. They can also do the orange and green areas, but that's what they refer to, that we'd have to go out and contract for that. So we gave them an opportunity to tell us more, but we didn't give that opportunity to the other proposers. So we would have to go through the procurement process to add on beyond the blue. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So at that point, are there any questions? Are there any questions? This is all fiber. This is not wireless. This is, some of it is buried, and I believe most of it is above ground. But there are some buried areas. Mr. Gary Wood is here to answer questions if you have questions about his proposal. And we can get Lit Communities on the phone if you have questions about the other proposals. Please keep in mind that today we're just trying to spend that $500,000 that you gave us. If you want to give us more, you can, but we'll have to go back out to spend that. And that money, you can direct how that would be spent, whether it's on wireless or it's toward one of the other proposers that have already been given, proposals that have already been given. But at this point, we are looking for you all to approve the recommendation that we go forward with the CVAC proposal, the base proposal.
I have any questions. Out of curiosity, is CVAC, since they are going to do some buried lines, are they able to service customers who are not CVAC electric customers?
Yes, ma'am.
And
this is because it's actually Firefly that's doing this. Firefly is wholly owned by CVAC, and Firefly is an internet service provider. And so these will be Firefly lines that will be servicing Firefly customers.
but the customer service will actually be done by CVAC, is that right? And just reading the proposal. 'Cause that was actually a plus, that was a plus to me.
Firefly?
Firefly has its own customer service.
Okay, okay.
For anyone who gets internet service from Firefly, whether a CDEC customer or not, they all go through the internet service provider, customer service reps who are trained with some different skills than the electric provider side.
Okay, all right, thank you. Board members?
Madam Chair, I'm not sure if Mr. Rogers can answer this, if we need to speak with Lit Communities. it seems like the Zytel proposal incorporated this area and the other side of 29 up into Clifford along Patrick Henry Highway for about the same amount of money, right? So it was a broader area, it was many more homes, yet I'd like to know why the recommendation came back to Firefly when it's less people served. That's one question. The second question I have would be for Dr. Arnold, and do you have any idea how many students you had in this area? So if you want to address question number one.
Yes, sir. The entire selection committee was intrigued by the Zytel proposal because on its face it does appear to cover more area and more people for about the same cost. And Zytel was considered to be somewhat of a newcomer in this area. And lit communities, if I can speak for them, based upon their recommendation, they believe that Hvac would be the more reliable and certain provider because they are already mobilized, their warehouses already have the materials ready to go, they have the crews in the field, and they can be assured of being done by 30 December. It would have taken, we just didn't have the time to do the background research into Zytel as to whether they could do so much more than Hvac could do. Did they have that experience? Did they have that equipment? Do they have the resources already on hand and the crews? And lit communities did not.
Hello, we're here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Jessica, I'm in the process of explaining why we did not go with Zytel, and we went with Hvac, and it was, I was about to conclude that we couldn't be certain of Zytel's ability to perform, and we were certain that Hvac could perform within the area that they were given. Now, there is nothing that keeps us with the rest of the COVID money, once we receive the lit communities plan, to go back to Zytel, and when the plan is presented, that we can receive proposals from many other providers, including Zytel. So we will solicit their assistance again. At this point, we're just trying to deal with this.
That's absolutely right. I mean, I think all of us on the review committee, including, Dr. Arnold, Teresa, your team, Mr. Rogers, and myself and Don were pleasantly surprised by Zytel's proposal. I think that what kept us hesitant on moving forward with a full-throated approval was really that they are just kind of getting going. And we didn't want to recommend somebody who didn't have as much of a track record for you all. But having said that, I liked their approach. I liked where they would be looking at providing you all coverage. And I think that's a follow-up conversation that should be happening with a thought of perhaps using some additional money. I would advocate, as with Brian and Renee on my team, that if you do decide to do something with Zytel, with some additional monies, that you look at a very defined scope so that you can not give this too much to start with and just see how that goes. Hvac, on the other hand, has quite a track record.
Thank you.
Yeah, I understand that, and I'm going to say something. I'm not saying it in the negative. It's just an observation. On the first page, you listed items A through H, and it's kind of put forward as a very objective way of rating the three different proposals, right? But if you look at the proposals apples to apples, Zytel should come out on top. Obviously they would rank lower in B, but they would rank higher in C because there's many more larger area, many more households, right? Because there had to be some very subjective thoughts on the selection. and I understand that, and I understand we have to spend this money by December 30th, yet I do think as we move forward, right, because I understand Lift Communities is going to bring us a county-wide plan in October, we should seriously be talking to Zytel, because, I mean, Firefly, I'm not taking anything from you, but your small area is equal to, in cost, is much higher than what they're doing. And I'm not going to get into with you why that is, but when you look at what's responsible and where we put county dollars, it's obviously a larger area, right? So I'm prepared to support the Firefly proposal, but I think as we move forward, we should be looking at putting some funding into Zytel also. That being said, Dr. Arnold, I did, it sounds like you were on this team, is that correct? And is this an area where you have a number of students that need access?
Yes, we work with Jeremy Bryant on the GIS component of where our students were, and then we had our students survey as to whether they had reliable internet. Now, of course, those surveys are self-reported, and we don't always get 100% on them. But so our conservative estimate is there's 50+ homes in that area with students in it. So we could easily say there's over 100 students, and that's a conservative estimate in that one area.
I have a question, Dr. Arnold. And how many of your students are opting out of class this year? I saw 1,600
Yeah,
on the paper, but do you have a different figure?
that was as of yesterday.
That was as of yesterday.
They're opting out.
Well, they're saying
They're staying
Right,
at
right.
remote learning until another time when they.
So there's roughly 4,000 students.
Yes, yeah, we're 38% is what the number is of students going all remote. Now, they don't have to have internet to do all remote,
Oh, I understand.
but if they did, that would make it a lot more, yeah.
That was all.
All right, board members, our objective today at this point is just to review and move on the proposal that's before us from the current RFP. And after that, we can have discussions about if we want to put more investment into broadband for the county. But right now, we just need to decide between the recommendations given by Lit and our own good common sense, how we want to spend this first $500,000.
Well, Madam Chair, we're really talking to ourselves because we're making a recommendation to the board.
Correct.
Supervisors to appropriate this money, right?
That's correct.
And then we would use it. Okay.
To be clear, sorry, Mr. Mark, but you guys would be making the award contingent upon the appropriation later on.
So the majority of this, if not all of it, is in my district. And I understand, suffer from the same issues with the lack of internet. It's been very difficult. I would like to do more, and I'd like for us to research ways to broaden internet. I've said in the past, I don't think we can do it all at once. I think it's going to be a multiple approach. So I would make a motion that we accept. Was Zytel here?
Brilliant.
It is.
If you'd like me to say something, I can. I came in late, I apologize.
Well, yeah, I'd love to hear your response about kind of the concern of, the concern about not being able to complete the task by December 30th.
You just give us your name, please.
Sure, and I apologize for no mask.
Stay close to the mic,
I
please.
apologize for no mask. I left my office in a real hurry because Brandon was supposed to be either CEO, I'm the COO. And his grandfather had a second license and had to take off. He said, can you go to Amherst for me? My name's Rodney Graham, the Chief Operating Officer for Zytel Strategic Global Networking Group, who's the parent company of Zytel. This RFP is submitted. We were notified of this, the Amherst County RFP really late, so we got it in. I apologize for not being able to do any background on this, but just to give you some ideas. We've been in business
You
for four,
keep-
we've been in business for 4 years. We first started out as a network infrastructure company, doing network support and cabling and infrastructure as a subcontractor. We started Zytel in Bedford County, which is where the company's headquartered, to bring internet to the underserved communities of Bedford County. We went after tobacco grant money 2.5 years ago and had this whole plan laid out of where we were going to lay fiber in Bedford County, but then Comcast got the money. And they laid right down on the footprint that we were going to lay into. Since then, we've had contracts with Mark Electric, Lumos, Tennessee Valley Authority, and we've been laying fiber. We have all the more machines. We have over 25 crews up and down the East Coast that are laying fiber, doing all the construction work and all the infrastructure, and even the fiber to the home. We have crews. We had a contract for 4.5 years with Lumos in Botetourt County, Covington, even into Lynchburg, where our crews were the ones that went on site and ran the fiber into homes, placed all the internet, placed all the boxes in the homes. So those are the same crews that will be working on the project that we proposed for Amherst County. So we've got the crews in place, we've got the equipment, we've got the boring machines. They're just in different places right now. We're applying for the RFP that the CARES Act funding that Bedford County has downtown, that I think is going to be, towards the end of September, and we're hoping that because that reward would piggyback with the area that we proposed for Amherst for the backbone of the fiber. Our current customer base is in the downtown Manita area and in the Mayberry Hills area. We provide to the downtown Manita complex all their internet for Mayberry Hills. We're going to push towards the lake into Bedford County and just compete with Comcast. We're just going to drive the fiber. We think we have a better service, better customer service, better product, and that we can compete with Comcast and take the customers away. Before, with the cable companies, everybody was involved with TV. Now the TV is kind of the secondary option. People want the internet, they go with streaming services. I just wanted to try to relax your fears and tell you that we have the equipment, we have the crews. They're just, right now we're subbing those out because we're not laying our own fiber and putting our own service in place. So we've subbed those contractors out to different areas, Rockbridge, Lexington, Botetourt. And I know you've heard the fixed wireless plan that Blue Ridge Tower is doing for Bedford County and Franklin County. We do all their fiber work. We have the contract with them. We're laying all the fiber to the towers for the fixed wireless in Bedford and
So, okay, so I understand you got the equipment, you got the people. Are you in Amherst County right now?
we have no customers, we have no equipment, we have done no work on it.
So where would you be pulling from to get to this?
I'd have to look at the maps. I have not been involved in this, and like I said, I came here unprepared to speak on that exact. Brandon and Adam were the ones that put together all the maps and figured out the proposal of where the backbone would come out of Bedford.
I heard Big Island or somewhere in that
I think
area.
it's coming out of Big Island. That's the part we're putting in fiber right now for the Blue Ridge Tower fixed wireless solution that Bedford County's put in place. And when we run fiber for anybody else, we lay secondary conduits and put our own fiber in place so we can have a backbone going into areas. And so right now, as we lay fiber for Blue Ridge Tower, we're laying our own fiber. So that will be the backbone that will come out of our POP in Bedford County into Amherst. Although I think Brandon's proposal did have an area where we would set up a POP in Amherst County to distribute the internet out to the customers for the last mile.
Yeah, but coming all the way from Bedford County, Big Island area, that's a long way to get to Torytown and Boxwood Farm.
Parts of it were leased fiber from Mid-Atlantic Broadband, I think. So, or I believe that's what's on the proposal, that we're going to lease some dark fiber from them.
Well, if fiber's already there, how come we don't have access to it?
Well, because Mid-Atlantic Broadband doesn't, they're what they call middle mile carriers. They only provide access to their fiber to basically ISPs. Mid-Atlantic Broadband doesn't really sell internet to individual customers. Same way that Mid-Atlantic Broadband getting fiber up to Virginia Tech through Botetourt County, it's one of the main thoroughfares that fiber run through there. That's one of the most underserved areas around. It's kind of like if you think about the interstate system, the Mid-Atlantic Broadband, the fiber backbones are the interstates. Localities still have to put in exit ramps and build their own road infrastructure through their towns and through their towns. It is a layman's way of putting
Any further questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, obviously no selection has been made yet of any of the proposals. You all will make that decision. And I think what you can see here a little bit is that given the deadlines and the amount of money and so forth involved, I want to apologize because we are driving ahead of our headlights, and we're going as fast as we can here, and we're not able to be as thorough, I think, as we would like to be, and will normally be, and will be when we get the final build-out plan. The recommendation before you from LIT is a conservative one and is a safe one, but you have the authority to do several things. I mean, you can award one proposal, or you could award two. You could direct staff to go. I mean, it would take some additional funding. You could direct staff to negotiate with both to deconflict areas so that they're not overlapping each other. You have all the options in front of you. What we have done is given you the safe recommendation from our standpoint, but you're the ones that assume the risk, not us, and we will do everything we can to implement whatever it is that you direct us to do.
Well, we retain LIT communities to develop a plan which will be available by October. And I understand the rush for step one that we're dealing with now. I do understand that. But personally, I would like to see what LIT Communities comes up with as a holistic plan for the entire county.
I would agree.
Yeah, I agree too. That was one of my concerns when I spoke with Mr. Rogers is, I'm supposed to advocate for the people in my district, and there are people in my district that are underserved, off Coolwell Road, Isaac Wall, and some other areas. Is that better?
Yes.
So anyway, I would just like, I think we have to wait before we go put in a bunch of money into something we really, like you just said, you're driving ahead of your headlights. So I think the Hvac
Well,
proposal.
can I say something? This is Jessica from LIT, as you all know, because I'm speaking from the phone, but I have to say, this whole process has been completely backwards from how we usually come in and do things. And all of this was in relation to trying to assist the county in spending the CARES Act funding quickly and trying to get design and engineering and preliminary design and then detailed design and everything, and construction and everything up and going before the end of the year. So we basically took a process that we typically use that takes, 3-4 months to do, and have tried to accelerate it for you and start backwards. So in terms of getting a whole plan from us in October, which is not necessarily undoable at all for us, but in order to ask us to do that and then expect to just wait and see what we have to say about what you should do with the proposals that you have in front of you, it's not going to work to your advantage.
I don't think that's what we're saying at all. That's not what we're saying.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry. I'm not at the meeting, so it's.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to follow us if you're on the phone. No, that's not what we're saying.
But I will say, like, Firefly, I guess, Hvac, they have a lot of, what you've done in Nelson County by laying a lot of fiber in there, you have a track record that I know about, and this is it's a small area, but we would be able to do it in a relatively short period of time.
I'm sorry, I don't want to dominate this conversation. I do have one further question. So let's say we decide to go with company A, and we're confident that they can complete this by December 30th, and we've spent the money. Let's say they don't meet the deadline. What happens then? Our COVID money goes away, but we're still on the hook for $500,000, correct?
No, sir, it's worse than that.
Okay, there needs to be some protections.
Right. We have to give the money back.
Yeah, so.
Unless the rules change, and hopefully they will. If they're close to finishing, we beg for the additional time, that the money was already committed, that it was other circumstances beyond the contractor's control to finish and so forth. I mean, we do know that we have 90 days beyond the 30th to actually make the payment, but the guidance still exists that it needs to be finished by the 30th of December.
So, Mr. Lockerbie, what kind of protections for the county could be built into the contract? I mean, basically, if it's not done by December 30th, I don't think we should have to pay.
I'm spending a lot of time thinking about how exactly to put that together. And I agree that that would probably be the position that we would initially take. We might want to go into closed session to discuss this in further detail, but I have several ideas for ways that we can cover ourselves or potentially give a bonus for early completion, in which case maybe they won't meet it, but at least they'll try for it. There are different options that you can use in order to get people to go on that policy. You can also put in place surety policies where if a person goes over, then a third-party insurance company winds up basically paying for it. I don't know what the pricing is for that at the moment. I do know that if somebody had, the biggest problem that we have right now is that due to the CARES Act, federal procurement, because it is a federal grant, it's federal money, there are certain things that we need to do, among which are Buy America. American-made fiber cannot be had for love or money right at the moment, unless you happen to already have it earmarked somewhere that you already have it. And that was one of the main things that we were looking at in this was, if you have a crew that already knows how to string fiber and you've got fiber sitting on your lot, or at least in a supply chain with your name on it, we have a lot more confidence that you're going to be able to get this done by December 1st so that we can fix any problems during December than not. And one of our main points criteria was, do you have that situation? I know that isn't quite as comforting as my saying right now, without even having drafted the contract, if you don't do it, we're not going to pay you on January 1. But that is the objective, is to get to that answer.
I'm comforted in the fact that you're thinking about this. I mean, I think you understand why I'm bringing this up, because we don't want to sign a contract with any of these companies and then they not fulfill the obligation, right, by December 30th, and we still have to pay them, plus give $500,000 back to the federal government. Because I think, I'm not saying that broadband is not important, internet's not important, but I think we would be thinking really, really hard before we spend $500,000 of non-grant money, right, on this, right?
Well, at this point, we're only dealing with grant money. We're not using any county's
You're
money.
exactly right, but all of this COVID money puts us in a very different position. But when we have to start paying things back, it puts us in another position. So, again, I'm willing to move this forward, at least for me, yet we need assurances that it's going to be done and we're not going to be on the hook for $500,000. It's not.
Understood.
If it brings you any comfort, every locality in the nation is having these same types of discussions, because everybody's in the same position. It's just not Amherst, it's just not Virginia, but anyway.
Oh, sure.
I don't think that we can let fear and some uncertainty keep us from moving forward, because that's my bottom line.
Oh, I'm not afraid, I just want to make sure the county's protected.
Right.
And that's what we need to do.
All right, board members, are you ready to take a position on this? Make a motion?
Sure, I make a motion that we accept, with the community's recommendation of moving forward with Firefly Broadband Improvements.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you.
The question now, Madam Chair, is whether you want to do more than that. You, the Broadband Authority, would direct staff to get more proposals, perhaps buy the mobile units that have been suggested by SCS, or anything else that you want to do here in the immediate future to try to help the schools get up and running. And we will then pursue that and come back as you need us to. But I do know that the mobile units were part of the SCS proposal. I believe that Dr. Arnold still would like to have 4 of those. We could accept that part of the proposal. But what you've done at this point is you gave us $500,000 to spend on broadband, and you've now directed us to go spend that 500. So you want us to do more.
How much of the funds do we have that have the deadline attached to them? I know that we put some aside because of the switch for the salaries. How much money is tied to the deadline?
Hang on.
There's a lot of moving of money around.
Yeah, I know.
And
It's complicated.
So, let's see. You have in savings, so to speak, to be able to move around, is $1,051,000. And we've already placed $1 million into your general fund reserve as of the end of June.
With an intent attached to it or not?
Nope, it just goes into your general fund reserve.
Okay.
Because we're moving the payroll over.
so that's 2 separate amounts.
Yeah, so that's already done. I can't go back and we'll have to appropriate from the general fund reserve if you want to use that $1,054,000. But the numbers under the disbursement, on that sheet I gave you a little while ago, the savings fiscal year 2021 of $1,051,000, that can be played with and shifted around.
Without deadlines, without restrictions.
Yeah, there's no, I mean, if we get to December 30th and we haven't spent that money, I'm going to use the payroll.
All right, let me reword this.
Okay.
How much money do we have that we're at risk of losing that doesn't have an intent assigned to it? Or looking at it another way, is there any money that's just sitting there with a deadline attached to it that we need to use for broadband and make a decision on it quickly? That's what I want to know.
Everything is spoken for. It's either in the savings.
Except, yes, it's all been assigned out. All the money that you could lose by the end of the year, you've already allocated it for a variety of purposes. One of those purposes, however, is just savings. In other words, do nothing with it. $1 million of that, am I reading that right, Stacy?
$1,051,000.
$1,051,181 is assigned to be saved. For
right,
I thought it was $2.1 million.
Yes,
And
Yes.
one of the reasons we're saving that money is because Lit Communities is bringing back a proposal, a county-wide proposal, and we can certainly pull from that once we get that information.
yes, you can.
So,
It went down from 2.2 when you appropriated the technology funds last time. So every time we move some money to another need, the savings number is going to drop.
That's where we draw it from.
Yeah.
All right, let me try this. I
that's,
would like to see.
that's not what you told us though at the last meeting. We had additional funds.
I thought it was like $2.2 million.
Right, and so now you're at 2.1.
Well, yeah, but
We took a little bit out to take care of the technology needs that you all appropriated
For COVID.
for COVID. For teleworking.
That wasn't my
I
understanding.
thought that was part of other appropriation, the other COVID money.
Yeah, the new COVID money, that was my understanding. That's the way it was sold to me.
That was beyond the original allocation. And so that's why we came back to you, it was beyond the original allocation.
Like $100,000,
134.
yeah,
Yeah,
for
And so-
laptops and things of that nature.
yes, ma'am. And so we had to come back and say, all right, we need to add this to the listing of allocations. You know, where do we have to take it from? The only place we have, not sure this is the,
I
should show the same sheet we showed
I
last
think
week.
we're doing more.
All right,
No, that one was.
Yeah, can we, all right, board members, let me ask you this. We have allocated $500,000 to fixing our broadband problem and our access problem. I personally want to see us do more than that. I want to see us do a lot more than that. I think that we have an opportunity to move Amherst County forward faster than any time we've ever seen, and may never get an opportunity like this again, and I want us to capitalize on that. So, do other board members feel the same way, or are we happy with where we are right now?
I think from the broadband board's perspective, I anxiously await the October report from the communities. Then we will have a better idea of where we could be talking to the supervisors about placing money. I strongly encourage Zytel to work, to get in contact with Zytel about getting into the county. But putting my board hat on, I think there's a lot of needs in the county other than broadband. And I don't think we can dump it all in one area. Right? So, yes, I'm open to putting more into broadband once we know where it should be.
All right, do you need anything further than that from us?
Yes,
Okay, what is it?
yes. And that is with regard to the Lit Communities contract. That contract, to get us through this rush job we've just had and into the final plan, their total fees are about $120,000. Okay? So what we have done today is you've directed us to finalize the contract for $500,000 with Hvac. Okay? Well, 500 and 120 is 620. And you have previously directed us appropriated 500,000 toward broadband. We need another 120 for lit. It was either go for the 500,000 or go for 380, a $380,000 contract, so we didn't exceed the 500. And so, now, to explain, just give you another crack at explaining how this money is working. It's coming in two parts, but what you've done is you have assigned all of the money that we need to spend by the end of the year. Okay, it's all been assigned out. So anytime a new project, and one of the categories is set it aside. Wait, that's what we're calling the salary switch. Okay, all that does, it's still there for you to spend. All that does is it gets it out from under the 30 December deadline. So because you've already allocated everything, whenever we allocate something additional that wasn't part of the original allocation, the only place to get that money from is from the amount that you set aside in savings. So we pull that in at 130 for the IT equipment. We pull that back. Pull that out of savings to add it to that allocation. And so that's what we suggest that you do with regard to the Lit Communities contract. That also must be drawn from that set aside allocation. If, for instance, you heard as the Service Authority Board today about the Service Authority wanting construction funds to work on social distancing in their offices, if you were to do that, that would come from that set-aside money. The Sheriff's Office has asked for additional squad cars. If you were to approve that, it would come from the set-aside money. Does that help?
You're going to continue to have different requests through this process as we encounter new challenges. So that's when we get to the appropriation in a little while. That's why it's just lump sum, because that way you can change your allocations easily.
Okay. One, I agree me wrong, but I remember the lit community contract not being 120, I thought it was more like 60. I could be wrong, but that's not really relevant.
That's what it was with the schools, and then we doubled it by adding the whole county.
Okay. Fair enough. I think it would have been important to say, broadband board, you're on the hook for $120,000 out of this $500,000 application, instead of waiting for us to say, yep, we're putting $500,000 in Firefly. Oh, by the way, we need another $120,000. Right. That's just me, and I also think, now we're getting in board business, that we went through the list of where we were going to allocate, or where we wanted to allocate the COVID funds, right? And we said, yep, we can spend some of, we can do the salary swap, switch, whatever you want to call it, and put that 2.2 in savings. And then when we went down the list last meeting, I again thought that the working remote money was coming out of the new allocation that was given to us.
We didn't have that at the time.
You didn't have to work.
When you did the appropriation for the teleworking, we did not have the allocation from the federal government, from the state. We did not know about it until the last minute, so it wasn't being asked for from the new allocation.
That was my understanding. I understand what Tom just says is exactly what I understood we were doing last meeting.
Yeah,
The teleworking stuff was done a month ago.
Our last meeting,
The teleworking was appropriated. This is the third meeting since then.
I know that when we decided, in my mind, my recollection, the way I understood this, was that we entered into a retainer with Lit Communities. It was gonna be just a school, then came countywide. We entered into a retainer with them. That's over here. We decided we were gonna spend $500,000 on broadband. That was over here. I never considered that we would take that retainer money out of the $500,000. I never thought that. Because in my head, we wouldn't have been spending $500,000 on broadband access, and I know I would have raised Cain about that.
Okay, so if you look on August 18th, the CARES Act funding allocation worksheet of $5,514,000. Down here at the bottom, you've got 800,000 in savings, and then 1.2 million in savings. And then up above it, you had telework equipment, 134,800. So I'm not sure how that comes out of that savings amount.
I don't have the.
Yeah, so I think, I think for a broadband discussion, we're pretty much done what we need to do, but I think as far as the board discussion.
Okay, so let's take that up when we go in, when the board meets. Which will be in as soon as we finish here. All right, do we need to do something with the resolution, Mr. Lockerbie?
We already had a motion to do the award. We have no further business before the broadband authority.
Okay, all right. Is there a motion to,
Adjourn?
adjourn, thank you. So motion for the broadband authority to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, motion on the floor, everybody say aye. Opposed, no. Broadband authority is now adjourned. We need an approval of the agenda for the Board of Supervisors. Motion on the floor by Ms. Moore, all in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The agenda is now, for the Board of Supervisors is approved. Excuse me, I've lost my computer here. All right, we will now open up the meeting to citizen comments. Anyone here wishing to speak? Seeing and hearing none, we will close citizen comments and open the meeting up to the public hearing for the CARES Act 2020.
Mhm.
You are, Mr. Rogers, are you gonna lead that or who's leading that?
Sorry, a little confused. So this is simply the same resolution we had for the first tranche of money that we got. We'll appropriate $190,633 to the town, and the rest of it to COVID-19 related expenses. And that way you will have flexibility in your spending plan as things move forward. Any questions? It has the same exact stipulations as the first tranche.
Okay. So
Any
we're about to
questions?
have a public hearing.
Ms. Will?
Yes, ma'am?
I'm waiting for my computer to catch up.
Oh.
I'm trying to see my computer. See myself.
So if I may, Madam Chair, we're about to conduct a public hearing because this additional $2.7 million exceeds 1% of our operating budget. And before we make any change to our operating budget of more than 1%, there has to be a public hearing to hear from the public about what they think about this change that we're proposing. Fortunately for us, this change is an increase based on additional revenue. So all that we're proposing to do is to put that into the general fund and make it available to all CARES Act related purposes, and not be more specific than that at this point in time.
All right, thank you, for that preface, Mr. Rogers. We will now open a public hearing for CARES Act 2020. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of? Yes, sir, Mr. Hopkins.
Would now be the time for me to speak to what Mr. Rogers said a few minutes ago about the service authority? Maybe sharing this, or is that just a bad time to bring that up?
That might be a use for the money.
Sure, come forward.
Bob Hopkins, Executive Director, Amherst County Service Authority. When this came up several months ago with the first CARES Act stimulus package, there was suggestions by both County Administrator and Board Chair Tucker that the Service Authority might share in some of this money. In the subsequent meetings, it became obvious real quick that you all had other ways to spend the money, so I wasn't going to push that. At the last board meeting, I heard about the second stimulus package, and everybody seemed to be scrambling for ways to spend the money, and you talked about it for apparently quite a bit. I had to leave the meeting early. I heard the meeting went really late. The next morning, I sent an email to all board members for the supervisors and the Service Authority Board suggesting that if there was a way for the Service Authority to share in this, we would certainly like to. At the meeting this earlier today with the Service Authority Board, I passed out a way to spend some of that money for social distancing and COVID related issues for the water office. And I'm sorry I don't have copies for Mr. Ayers and Ms. Tucker, but Mr. Martin, Mr. Pugh, and Ms. Moore have copies of that. It'd be $137,000 to do HVAC improvements. Right now, that our public area and the clerk's workstations are climate controlled with window air conditioning units that don't work very well. The workstations are not separated by 6 feet, and we're probably not really separated properly from customers when they come in. So I had Dominion 7 architects who did the evaluation of the water office a couple months ago. They came in and did a breakdown of what we might be able to do as a first phase of water office improvements, and $137,000 could be used for those kind of improvements. So if you wanted to see the copy that I gave the other three, they would break it down more. But I'm not trying to throw another monkey wrench in this. I know you all have been working on this for a while. I don't want to complicate it. But if there is a possibility, if you're still looking for ways to spend some money, we could use it at the water office. So that's just a request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the CARES Act 2020? Yes, sir. Come forward, please. And even though we all know who you are, for the record, give us your name.
Chair, Jim Thompson, 214 Camden Drive. That's nice, thank you. I would like to speak in support of the CARES money. I do believe it would be advantageous for the county. And in conjunction with that, I would like to support some of the thoughts that have been said about broadband and trying to pull in any additional funds that the board may see fit before 12/31. I did review all the RFPs. I was on the original selection committee for SCS when the board went through that process. And I went through, I think Mr. Taylor said, I went through some fits and starts with SCS as they were ramping up their first multiple sites. But you know what? They smoothed out a lot of those bumps, and some of their backhaul issues have been smoothed out. And I've tried to give them input to help them with that along the way the best I can. I'm only here to say there may be a good possible solution because we're looking at interim solutions to spend money that's wisely spent. I still think the Firefly solution is an excellent solution, and the build on, the add-on that they have is excellent. And I think more fiber we put in the county, the better it will be. I think the comments about Zytel, even though I'm new to them, I've tried to research them. I'm in support of them if they're a potential good partner. But the key is, and I know for you guys, is can we get it spent before 12/31? I would implore you that anything we can. If you look at SCS, their proposal has several sites in it. And I know you already mentioned the mobile sites. I think those are critical for right now, for our schools starting back up, for Dr. Arnold and his staff. But I also think some of the sites that they proposed, for instance, one's on the backside of Tobacco Mountain, where I know there's some shadows of coverage back there for folks. There's one, I think, here at the courthouse building. There's several that are not overlapping with what Firefly and Zytel had proposed. So again, you may be able to call out some of those things, but I just appreciate you looking at this. And again, if you can pull in any additional dollars that are wisely spent, other than what we're looking at with Firefly, I think we'll be well spent. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. We appreciate that. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? All right, anyone here wishing to speak opposed? Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing none, we will now close the public hearing and turn it to the Board of Supervisors. Board members?
Madam Chair.
I was just going to ask a question. So we're appropriating the money into the budget. We're not.
The total amount into the total budget.
We're not dictating where it will be spent.
That's correct. And of course, until we actually obligate it, you can continue to move it around.
Madam Chair, I move that the board adopt resolution 2020-0020-R as presented.
Motion on the floor by Ms. Moore. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you. We'll now move to the consent agenda. Any questions? Any changes? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion, the consent agenda passes. We'll move on to first readings, revisions to chapter 14, tax code.
Madam Chair, I'm going to address this item because I drafted this, and I know that Ms. Wilkes has already addressed this in great detail ad nauseum to y'all, but I still might call upon her for a little bit of backup if you ask questions I haven't got the answer to. This is the first set of revisions to the tax code, which are set to go into effect on January 1st of this year. There's also a second set, which we had talked about before, and where there was a little bit more ambivalence about how we were going to structure it, which had to do with meals tax and cigarette tax. This predominantly has to do with the abolition of the merchant's capital tax and the restructuring of the B-poll tax. So the merchant's capital tax, ancient tax, goes back forever. The basic concept of the merchant's capital tax is that retailers and wholesalers are taxed a certain number of cents per hundred for all of the stuff that they have on hand at the beginning of the year as of January 1st of each year. There were concerns on various policy grounds expressed about the merchant's capital tax. It's really gone out of fashion. Very few localities have it anymore. most localities have moved over to the idea of having a business license tax. So the very first thing that these ordinance amendments do is remove all mention of the merchant's capital tax from our local code. The second thing that it does is it adds provisions relating to the B-poll tax. And a lot of people tend to think of the B-poll tax as being a gross receipts tax, but that's not actually technically how it's structured. Technically, it is a business license fee. The size of the business license fee is determined by the impact that the business has on public services. And they use gross receipts as a rough and ready measure of what the size of the business is. Basically, if you're a big business, you have more gross receipts, you have more public impact. So, this ordinance creates new classifications for retailers and wholesalers, and new sub-classification for sales that are retail of fuels. It sets the B-poll tax at 20 cents per $100 in gross receipts for retailers, and 5 cents per $100 in gross receipts for wholesalers. It also creates the sub-classification, as I mentioned, of fuel at 8 cents per $100. The reason being that there are lots of gas stations that just move vast gross receipts in gasoline, but it's an extremely low margin commodity, and it really doesn't add much more to their impact than they would otherwise have from the convenience store where they're paying the 20 cents on the retail. The objective of these changes, as you know, is to be revenue neutral across the board. In the course of reviewing this ordinance, I also found several, this ordinance had last apparently been looked at in any detail in the early 2000s, between 2000 and 2005. Found several things that really needed to be updated in order to bring our code into line with the state code and with what Commissioner Irby is actually doing. The first of these is it has an exemption in there, which is required by state code for certified pollution control equipment. However, since 2004, when that ordinance was added to our code, the tax exemption for certified pollution control equipment has changed. Just the process for doing those exemptions, which state agencies are responsible for doing the certifications, when you do the report, if you own that equipment to the Commission of the Revenue, those have all changed. There's also been an addition this past year, which we're actually required to adopt if we're going to codify this into our local code, which has to deal with a partial tax exemption for solar energy generation facilities. And I can go into that in more detail, probably will at some point in the future. There's also a slight update to the procedure for refunding of taxes erroneously paid. It sets the cap for the amount that the treasurer and the commissioner of the revenue can refund on their own at $2,500. The cap under state code is $5,000. You could set it higher if you want. I just threw $2,500 in because that's fairly typical for counties our size. Above that level, it actually needs to be approved by the county attorney and the board of supervisors. Typically, the county attorney will sign off, and often it even goes on the consent agenda. But that extra level of oversight by the board of supervisors tends to make the auditors have warm feelings in their heart. Updates to the process for taxation of new structures substantially completed. Again, just bringing ourselves into line with state code. Finally, I wanted to note that we get rid of the section applying a communications consumer utility tax. That tax was put into our books in 1988 and last looked at in 2002. It was abolished by the state in 2007. Commissioner Irby has not been assessing it because state law prohibits it, but it just seems to me as though our local code probably ought to conform to what the state's requiring us to do anyway. I'm open for any questions that you have.
Board members, any questions? Ms. Hvac, we appreciate the work you have put into this. I know it had to be an arduous task.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that the board direct staff to advertise these ordinance amendments for public hearing at the board September 15, 2020 meeting.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion moves forward. Ms. Rogers, any questions from you of the board?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
All right, next we've got a special presentation on debt refinancing.
But I do want to ask the board, with regard to the ordinance. The ordinance only deals with B-Pole and merchants capital. It does not deal with meals tax. It does not deal with the cigarette tax. Would you like us to bring that proposed ordinance change back to you? Is that still, there was some discussion at a prior board meeting about whether some board members expressed reluctance to go forward with the increase of 2% on the meals tax. And so that has not been brought to you yet. Can we receive some direction whether you want to proceed with that 2% increase? I mean, Mr. Lockerbie is already working on drafting the cigarette tax because that seems to still be going forward, and we'll have to bring that to you for a first read. But should we also include meals tax, an increase to meals tax in that?
Board members, I'll start by giving my thoughts. I was okay with both taxes. I'm fine with both of them. If people have reservations about the food tax, I could change my mind there, but especially where I worked for 20 years, they'd have my head, but I'm fine with the cigarette tax.
Madam Chair, my understanding is that you were going to bring them both forward. My question to staff was, what would it take for a cigarette tax to equal the amount of not the meals tax? That doesn't mean I didn't want the meals tax to come forward. I just wanted to have all the information. So my understanding is that both would come forward. If we didn't have to adopt the meals tax because you could do it all on the cigarette, so be it. Yeah, I think they would both come forward.
So,
Mr. Martin, for what it's worth, I do plan to have that ordinance ready for the first meeting in October for a first read. I was simply not able to get that far for this time around, if that's what the desire of the board is.
Are there any board members who don't want to see that brought forward?
I mean, the cigarette tax, because it was because it wouldn't go into effect until next July, I thought if I had to put more time into one thing or the other.
Oh, yeah, but isn't that what the county administrator was asking us if we wanted that to be brought? But you're planning on bringing
that was my plan unless we had direction otherwise.
Everybody good with that?
and the meals tax too.
Mr. Pugh?
That's right. All right. All right, and we'll just bring it forward in next month.
Debt refinancing.
We can answer your question now, Mr. Martin, with regard to the cigarette tax. Would you like to receive that? Or wait till?
Absolutely, I'm sure you work very hard.
So, it is kind of a stab in the dark, but I estimated 25 cartons a day, somewhere between 20 and 25 per establishment. So at the 27 cents, so I always roll down my estimates. So the $1 million is about right for that at the 27 cents. You would need to go almost to 40 cents. 40 cents will give you about 1.65, 1.7 million.
So it's really not.
Well, I mean, you would get all of it without the meals tax, and that's my estimate. So we won't know until people start paying it. But if you think about most establishments, 250 packs a day. So if I walk in Quickie, I can almost guarantee you at least 8 to 10 packs are gonna walk out the door before I get my drink or whatever. So I kind of went on that estimate. So if you think about it as a carton. So.
I appreciate you looking at it.
I mean, I've run the numbers. We're about twice the size of Appomattox, but we also have almost three times the establishment. So I don't know how that'll fall out. We also have a Sheets, which is, they tend to do a boatload of business. I mean, Farm Bulls 5 years ago was about 40,000 a day or a week. I can't remember exactly, but it was huge. It was just ridiculous. They got Sheets just rolls 24 hours a day. So
Then 40 cents per tax.
yes. So you could probably take it down to about 37 to get the 1.5. But that's just, since you don't know how many are sold in the county yet, it's kind of hard to really nail it down. I just know we have a Murphy Oil, we have a Sheets, and we have a, that smokestack out in Bass Pipes that seems to roll constantly. So.
The city charges 35 cents a pack. Tax.
Just information to have.
Any further questions?
As you start evaluating the two.
Any further questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready now.
Hello, my name is R.T. Taylor. I'm from Davenport and Company. We've got a couple reasons for being here today. Right now, we're talking about the county's potential refunding opportunities. Just wanted to talk through the book that we shared with you outside of the meeting. Big picture, from time to time, as the financial advisor to the county, we review the county's debt portfolio for opportunities to lower the interest rate and potentially come in under budget to reduce that budgeted debt service that you have to pay each year on your obligations. So what we've identified on page 1, I'm looking at the bottom right-hand corner. Page 1 shows you a few refunding candidates, and these are either to be refunded for debt service savings or paid off early. Those are the candidates we're looking at. We're looking at a 2007 USDA RD loan that has an interest rate of 4.25. I mean, excuse me, a 4 1/8. And we'll get to some more details when we get to page 4. But that is producing quite a bit of savings, even though it has about $1.8 million outstanding in principal. There's a 2016 equipment lease purchase that the county did for school projects, energy savings equipment in the schools. And then there's 2 loans that were done in 2017, one for the landfill project and one for some other county projects that included some refunding and some other debt. So what we've done in coordination with county staff, county attorney, bond counsel, we've sort of aggregated our efforts and gotten in 2 applications. One where some of these projects are eligible through the Virginia Resources Authority through their fall pool. And then the other one, the 2016 loan that financed school equipment, that's actually eligible to be done through the Virginia Public Schools Authority fall pool. Right now, the estimates are that the VPSA pool would produce better savings, and that's what we'll walk you through that analysis here shortly. Also, we'll talk to the new money piece that is applied for under VRA, and we had to get an application and hold a place in line by August 7th. But the application in and of itself has not obligated the county to participate in the VRA call. We have until late September to give them the high sign or the nay sign. Do we want to proceed? Okay. So having said that, just going to spend a little bit of time on page 2 and then move into the analysis part. One of the refunding candidates, is what we're calling it, would actually be a candidate to be prepaid early, paid off, incomplete, and do away with an interest rate that's 2.57%. Right now, the 2017 A's have an interest rate of 2.57%. And the landfill project has gone away, and in its place, we understand that there's a need for transfer stations and convenience centers. So we would be paying off the existing loan in full and getting new money for the new projects at a much lower interest rate that you'll see here shortly. Okay? If we turn to page 4, we can walk through some of the numbers. I'm just going to step through scenario 1 sort of a little bit painstakingly because there are a lot of details, but I'll try to highlight the pertinent data points. And then we'll flip to scenario 2, and it'll follow the same format, the same columns, etc. And you'll see that column 2 is slightly better. Scenario 2 is slightly better because that's where we're assuming the 2016s will be refinanced through BPSA.
But may I ask you a question before you go just much further? Are we taking on additional debt with this refinancing?
Not with the refinances, no. There's an opportunity that we'll speak to in just a minute where you could potentially get some new money for transfer station projects if that's your desire. And again, I'd like to reiterate, I know I sort of said at the beginning when I handed the books out, this is an informational session today. This is not where we're asking you to give us guidance or take formal action, okay? What we want to present are 2 components to this overall presentation. One being the refunding, which could take place in and of itself, by itself, and would only be transacted if certain parameters are met that you would come back at a future date at a meeting and establish those parameters. And then we'll talk about the new money component for your consideration. So in this analysis for the refunding components, you'll see in the first column under 2007 USDA, you've got roughly 1.8 million outstanding in par amount on line 2. You see that on the matrix on the left. It's currently at a rate of 4.125 on line 5, that's the coupon. And it goes out to 2043, okay? And what we've been running in here and showing is that we can actually shorten that debt, pay it off earlier without going over budget. We're actually going to come in under budget, that's the current estimate, and we would actually shorten it up to fiscal year 38. So you would cut 5 years of debt service off the back end and create future capacity for the county. Does that make sense? So right now, the way the public markets are, instead of having a 4 1/8% all the way out through 2043, you would potentially have a 1.6% interest rate out through 38. That's for the 2007 USDA loan. And the estimated gross cash savings is there on line 22 at $670,000. You'd save over the life of the loan. And let me just switch gears a little bit to the right-hand side of the page because these will follow suit. If you look at the first column under the estimated cash flow savings matrix on the right, the 2007 USDA loan, these are your net savings starting with fiscal year 21 of $3,600 on out through 2038. So again, we're essentially trying to break even by shortening up the debt, getting the lower interest rate, and cutting out several years of $126,000 there on the back end. So your savings would essentially be all out there on the back end. Okay, and that's again the concept of creating future debt capacity. Any questions on that methodology or what we're reflecting there? Okay, so again, the methodology is going to be consistent. We're going to work from left to right. The 2016 lease, that's the school eligible component, that has a current interest rate of 2.19% there on line 5, and roughly 7.7 million outstanding on line 2. And potentially based on that maturing in 2030, in a shorter loan, the interest rate would be much smaller at 0.83% in the current market. And so those savings are shown on the right-hand side under the 2016 lease column. in total to $392,000 over the life of the loan. So on that particular one, we're matching the maturity. We're not extending, we're not shortening. It's effectively being matured at the same fiscal year. And you're saving $392,000 potentially. Again, we will not know, interest rates will not be known until VRA prices its bonds on October 28th. And we would come back to the county board with council's help, the staff's help, in helping to establish those parameters so that when you got to October 28th and VRA priced its bonds, if they couldn't hit your target, it wouldn't get executed.
Let me ask you something.
Yes, sir.
These rates are ridiculous. As someone, but why would someone buy that bond at such a fuel?
So that's a great question. And you may recall a little bit of this discussion earlier. But when you're going to price bonds in the market, the underwriters are going to sell bonds. They have a structure of principal maturities by year. So November 1 of 2021, November 1, 2022, and all the way out to 2040, 2045. And each of those maturities, they're going to sell to an investor. And that investor is going to want a coupon, a stated rate that they're going to get interest on. Sometimes that coupon might be 5%, but the current market is yielding 2%. So they're willing, they want that 5% coupon to invest in and start collecting that interest. So they're willing to give you a premium to get that higher coupon, even though yields are low. And so by giving you that premium, you have to borrow less money. And that's when you net all that together, it produces a TIC, a true interest cost, which you're paying. And that's what that number is on line 17.
And it's also important to remember that these are tax exempt. So because investors aren't paying income taxes on that interest, they then are willing to accept less interest. And so the tax exempt bonds sell at a lower rate than commercial bonds do.
Does that help, Mr. Pugh?
Yeah, I just don't.
And the other variable of this is you notice on line, let's compare line 17 under the 2007 USDA loan of 1.6%.
Mhm.
Because that's a longer loan. It has maturities that go beyond 2030. It's 7 years longer. So because if you look at the interest rate curve, it's going to sort of slope. And by virtue of having that, the passage of time, the further out, the longer the maturity, the further up the curve goes. If you're back a little bit closer in earlier on, the rates are lower on that curve. And so you're comparing basically a 10-year deal under the 2016 loan to a 17-year deal for the USDA loan. That's why those interest rates are so different there, but they're all part of the same pricing. If there are no more questions on that one, we can move to the other two under 2017. 2017A, by virtue of cutting out and paying that one off, you free up $320,000. You no longer have to service that debt. So that's 2.5% that you're taking off the books. That's under the right-hand side under 2017A. That's the debt service you are cutting out, $320,000.
Can you explain that again? That maturity, it's a maturity of 2032.
Right, so that's fiscal year 33. So that's where you have some remaining proceeds from the 2017A financing that we're going to use because that project changed, it evolved, and we're going to take those old project proceeds and pay off the old debt of 2.5%. And that frees up $320,000 to be used in your budget for debt service. Any questions?
Any questions, board members?
I must have missed it. Can you go back to the beginning, just 2017A? I mean, it's a bond for $3.3 million. It's a 2.57% interest rate, I believe, or a coupon. And what are you saying is going to be done with this refinancing?
Let's flip back to page 2 real quickly. This might be helpful. So in 2017, the county borrowed funds for a new cell landfill project. And since then, that project has changed into going forward with a transfer station and convenience center approach. Okay, so we hit pause, the county hit pause on that old landfill cell project. So those proceeds can be utilized to pay off that old debt. So we've got $3.5 million roughly to pay off 3.5 million bonds. That collapses. You pay it off, you don't have to pay 2.5% on it anymore. And what we'll get to in a minute is by virtue of being able to have that opportunity to pay off that old higher debt with the remaining proceeds, we have an opportunity to get the monies for the new project at a lower rate. And the county will determine what you need in the way of project funds to get the transfer and convenience centers done.
Okay. So, Mr. Rogers, so there's 3.6 left of that $6 million. What did we spend the other part of that $6 million on the transfer station? It says the new I'm confused.
Right.
Because we took the money out to build the landfill, okay?
$4 million.
So we're building a transfer station instead.
Yes, sir.
So we have to have that money to build the transfer station. But what I'm hearing right here is he's saying that money is going to be spent to pay off a debt that we have. Is that right?
Well, we're gonna use the money to pay off that $4 million because it's got a high interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna go back as we refinance this and get another $4 million to build the transfer station at a lower interest rate. So that's how we're coming in. Our debt service is gonna be lower because we're gonna get the same amount of money. We're gonna pay off the old expensive loan and get a new cheaper loan for the same amount. That's what we're calling the refinancing, okay? So that'll be your first decision. And then you'll decide, because there's so much savings, whether you want to borrow more than $4 million. You want to borrow just 4? Do you want to do 5? Or do you want to do 6? Because we save money on all 3 of those options. Still save money. Hopefully that helps.
Oh, yeah, I understand. You're just taking the money, the proceeds and paying off the bond with it and then going out and getting a new.
Right. Or refinancing the house at a lower interest rate.
I got you.
Okay, so back on page 4, the same analysis for the 2017 Bs. We've got $3.5 million outstanding on the 2017 Bs at a coupon or interest rate of 2.32%. And based on it being an 8-year loan remaining, you can see on line 17 in the public markets that would be a TIC or a true interest cost of 0.62%. So we have the ability here to go out into the public markets via the state program. They issue and sell public bonds. Your loans are captured through that process, and you're able to generate savings that are under that last column where it says total annual savings. That's right. So if you flip the page 5, scenario 2, it's the same analysis. It's just slightly better savings because the other application we submitted was to Virginia Public School Authority, which was due yesterday. Again, it's not, the county is not obligated to participate. It's just a way to hold your place in line. So that's what we would potentially propose financing the 2016 school project financing through. And it produces slightly better savings on the 16s. So given those savings, or what you're pulling out of the budget by paying off debt early, we flip to page 7, and we're going to look at this transfer station / convenience center financing at a lower interest rate under a couple different scenarios in combination with the savings we're generating from the refunding opportunities. So working with staff, we looked at, okay, what would a $5 million project look like or a $6 million project look like amortized over 10, 15, and 20 years, and how would that come in under or at our budget, okay? So on the next page, that's where we looked at the 10-year new money amortization. So the amortization on the 10-year approach, where we're trying to keep it short and reduce debt service, the annual debt service on $5 million on the left-hand side would be roughly $525,000 a year. If you net that against your savings from scenario 2, then you're left with a need of about $138,000 over and above your current budget. Okay? So I'm going to skip to the 20-year approach, because I think what we've talked about for purposes of the useful life of the assets, this would be the best amortization approach, and it would match, sort of adhere to the matching principle, matching your useful lives to the payment of those assets. On the left-hand side, you've got the $5 million project, and on the right-hand side, you've got the $6 million, up to $6 million project. And what this is showing you on the left-hand side, I'm going to focus on the $5 million for right now. If you were to finance $5 million today at the interest rate of 1.86%, you'd achieve annual debt service of $305,000 a year. So you're borrowing $5 million at a lower rate, and it's debt service that's under your current loan that's still on $3.5 million at 2.5%. Okay? And then you look at the savings column, and you're able to actually come in under budget by about $80,000 over the next 10 plus years. So by virtue of the refundings, paying off some old debt, you can fold in the new debt at lower interest rate and still come in under budget over the next several years. Is that track? You all follow that? I'm sorry, page 10. So on the left-hand side, $5 million project, assuming the 1.86% interest rate, your annual debt service is roughly $305,000.
How far along are we on our current debt? How many more years do we have to pay?
That is 2032, so fiscal year 33. So roughly 13 years left. And that debt service is at $320,000 a year.
So we're adding on 7 years of debt repayment, which we still don't have significantly in.
That's right, and you'll recall on the USDA loan, we're cutting off 5 years on that one. So it's a combination of factors, and it's not easy to sort of just line up and think of it linearly. You've got different loans maturing at different time periods, so it's hard to sort of match them up and say there's an average. But you can see in the first 10 years on the left-hand side, there's about $80,000 where you're under your budget.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The parentheses, that's negative, right?
That's where you're saving. You're cutting out of your budget. That's why it's green, because it's a good thing. Green is good.
So let's take 2022, it says $85,000 is what we would see as in savings, right?
That's
Is that what
right,
you're saying?
even after adding in the new debt.
But then you're extending the loan out to 43. No, just
So fiscal year 41.
one.
And you'll see that lines up to where we cut out $126,000 of debt from the USDA loan over a 5-year period out there in the future, between 39 and 43. Do you see that under the savings scenario 2 column at the bottom? So you're cutting out, call it $5.1 million in debt service. You're adding in 6.1, right? But you funded effectively another $1.5 million. So again, we're not here for any motions or actions this afternoon. What we're here for is informational purposes to let you know that the county has some opportunities to save on lower interest rate debt, shortening some debt, and paying off some old debt and getting newer, lower rates. I think the thought process and the timing would be we'd come back to a future board meeting ahead of the DRA deadlines to let them know if you are interested in proceeding with any combination of these refinancings or financings.
So what we do need from the board is your choice, your selection. Do you want to just refinance the 4? Do you want to refinance 5? Or you want to get 6? And we're assuming, because of the life of the assets that we're financing, and we're recommending that you use the 20-year plan, 20-year payment plan, 20-year money.
What are your thoughts?
My thought is I would like, why don't we sit on this a little bit and look at it, come back in the next meeting, then we can make a decision. I don't like making a decision on such a, we just saw this today, so I'm not prepared to make a decision on it. That would be mine.
What's our deadline?
So VRA asked that we let them know by September 25th.
25th?
Correct. That's when their local approvals, they request local approvals be sent to them. So your next board meeting, I believe, is September 15th. So we have an opportunity to mull over this, figure out which path we want to head down, what project amounts we want to pursue, and be able to give VRA some fine-tuned adjustments, by that board meeting. And what we would recommend at that board meeting is setting parameters on the refundings, so that you would be happy with your targeted savings levels. The county could, set various different parameters so that when October 28th got there and VRA went to price its bonds in the public markets, if it could not hit the county's established parameters through the resolution, VRA would say, okay, well, it didn't work out. And they've also given us the guidance that if the parameters are set in a reasonable manner in the resolution, if we pass go, we do not have to pay their cost of issuance.
I'm with Mr. Pugh. I'd like to chew on this for a while.
Well, just a second, ma'am. Mr. Taylor before we give direction on how we're gonna go, don't we need, and before, to go borrow this money, don't we need to hold a public hearing?
I believe for the BPSA pool, they
Yes.
require a public hearing for that refinancing.
So our only opportunity to conduct a public hearing will be on the 15th.
Correct.
So we need to know what to present to the public.
But that's for
For
the
the 15th.
refunding, we would need a new money component in the BPSA pool. We would just.
Do we need a public hearing or not on the 15th?
Our understanding is that you would need a public hearing to participate in the BPSA pool, but I would defer to Mike.
Well, Mr. Lockley, what do you say?
For the BPSA, we definitely do. For the VRA, we have time after the 15th to do it. I can't remember whether a refunding bond requires it, but I'm pretty sure the new money bond by the county would.
Okay, well, that's a county-specific item. I can only speak to the VRA's requirements. They do not require a public hearing at the VRA pool program. BPSA does, because you're effectively issuing GO debt. So,
I will double check on that. I know that, for instance, when you're doing the VRA pool, when you're doing the mediation program, the revolving fund, counties do, and cities and towns do, but authorities don't. And so I'm gonna have to look at that. Okay.
now, the one item we could double check on with the folks at VRA is, for folks that have existing VRA debt already in the pool,
Right.
they do allow a little bit more flexibility on the timing.
Okay.
And we don't, your first October meeting is October 6th, or October,
October the 6th.
yeah, October the 6th. So what we could see, because they have indicated that those folks that have potential refunding candidates of existing VRA debt, that they would allow for, local approvals by the week of October 5th. So that might be something where we could ask if they would be, accommodate that. The other thing we could potentially do is have a special meeting later in the month of September for the county board.
And if I recall, we don't need a public hearing for the refunding, but I know that there's also a new money component, so I may need to just check with Megan what she's most comfortable with.
Okay.
I have a question. I look at this as three different things. Okay, you got the 2007 USDA. All right, you're saying that is, it's at 1.61 to the year 38. That's if you refinance.
That's
Currently, it's at 4.125. So that's one thing, right?
That's right.
Then you've got the 2016 with the $7.7 million. And you're looking at your interest costs could go down to 0.83%. So that's another one, correct? That's separate from what you're talking about with the 6 million. Is that right?
Correct.
He's on Scenario 1.
Yeah,
I'm on page 4 right now.
Yeah, I'm with you, sir.
I don't have a problem with those two. That seems like it's legitimate. And if you could go from a 4.125 down to a 1.6, yeah, I mean, that's going to save you a lot of money. I don't think you're extending these bonds out. Actually, you're shortening, I believe, one of them.
The 2007, yes, sir, about 5 years.
And then the other one is still going to be the same maturity, 2016 lease. What does that do with the refinancing regarding the maturity?
That stays the same fiscal year 31.
But, and then if you, I'm sorry, I just said this is kind of
You're
hard.
right. Again, this is supposed to be informational to give you a little bit of food for thought over the next couple of weeks so that we have direction from the board at the 15th or later in the month to say, okay, VRA, we'd like to proceed with the refundings. BPSA, we'd like to proceed with the refunding. VRA, we'd like to proceed or not proceed with the new money.
Okay, and then if you go back here and you start talking about the new money, the $5 or $6 million.
Yes, sir.
That is to do with the landfill money that we were talking about paying off the bond with. And then
going out and taking an additional, whatever, $5 million, right?
Yes,
And then, it's not an additional 5, but it's an additional,
it's an additional $1.5 million or an additional $2.5 million.
okay. And then I kind of got confused because I always thought a parentheses usually in accounting is a negative.
What we're trying to show is it reduces, that's why it's green, not red. It's a benefit. Green is good. That's sort of that's our approach. The reason why it's negative is to show it brings down or offsets a need.
Okay, so let's go over here and look, let's just take 2022 on page 8 as an example, $5 million on the 10-year new money.
Okay.
Line 17. You're saying that that's us $138,000 a year additional, so
Yes.
that's money that could be, that's freed up.
No. That's
You need
in
additional money.
addition to your budget.
Oh, you would need an additional $138,000 to fund.
Yes. And if you flip the page and look at the 15-year scenario, you're effectively break even. You could amortize the debt more quickly and do it under 15 years versus 20 because you're saving these dollars from your budget.
Because right now that loan will be paid off in 10, 12 years. You said 13, but it's somewhere 12, 13 years. Right now, the loan,
Yes, 13 years on the 2017 A's. So,
and so you really see your savings at the end of that.
in the total.
Do you have any other questions?
I do.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, so we need to understand how we can think about this and still meet any public hearing deadlines.
As it turns out, bond counsel has already initiated the public notice process. They're publishing notices that there will be a public hearing at our next meeting with regard to these. And so I suppose what we'll be doing then is we'll be going through all of this again and then asking you all to decide at that point with the benefit of public comment.
Although even then, if we absolutely need to, because of the strong refunding component in the VRA, we might even be able to then put it off to make the final decision until 1st October.
For the
What are we asking the public, what are we telling the public we're gonna have a hearing about if we don't know what we're gonna do?
This. All the options.
Okay, okay.
All the options are still on the table. If you're not deciding anything, all the options are on the table. And you'll get to hear from the public about all the options.
Okay.
Otherwise,
Multiple resolutions.
yeah, we'll have to have several resolutions ready for you as to what you would want to decide. So.
All right, board members, Mr. Arnold would like to come and I think he's got a question.
Yeah, just. I believe the UPSA portion of this has to go before our board through a resolution, and our next meeting is Thursday, and we won't have another one until October. So I guess I'm looking for some clarification on, can we approve that contingent upon their approval?
Yes, you can. In fact, what you're actually doing is you are passing a resolution requesting and expressing your desire that the Board of Supervisors refinance the debt on your behalf. Because the Board of Supervisors guarantees the debt because only they can lay the taxes. So the school board asks the Board of Supervisors to take tax money and commit it to paying that debt because only the Board of Supervisors can commit tax money.
but they won't have any details as to what the decision will be, and that's okay?
That's right, because what they're doing is asking you to make a decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just don't want y'all to have to wait.
Huh?
I just don't want y'all to have to wait.
Look, and I'll reiterate, I don't have a problem with, the 2007 USDA and the 2016 lease, because you can see that you're saving a good amount of money and interest rates are coming down. I'm just not, I don't know about the $5 million refinancing. So that would be the part that included you, would be the 2016 lease, right?
That's right. And we actually have a placeholder for the school board meeting September 10th. Okay, and that's where we would expect or anticipate. The resolution that the school board takes action on would include the request that the county issue its GO. And it also makes approval or authorizes the application to DPSA. In this particular case, because things are a little bit cart and horse, the application due date was yesterday, August 31st. The VPSA board doesn't actually meet until mid-September, September 16th. And they provide they're very flexible, trying to do what's right by the school authorities and counties. They said, look, just go ahead and get the application submitted, and we'll be happy to accommodate that as long as it's done and the school board acts before 9/16 when we have our board meeting.
Are you, Ms. Rogers, this is a lot of moving pieces, a lot of deadlines to meet. You understand what all we've got to get done?
Well, I have lots of help,
Okay.
so, yes, ma'am. And I do want to emphasize, I mean, the reason we brought this forward is because every option saves us money. Our concern is where our recurring revenue goes, especially with regard to debt service. Okay, we have this set amount that we have to pay every year. We've got to have taxes to pay that as recurring revenue. And each one of these options gets us a lower annual debt service payment. So in every case here, we're saving money. And so we combined this collection of debt to achieve that. So, we picked and chose and the interest rates and the deadlines on them to get a combination that would save us money and reduce the annual draw on our recurring revenue. All of these do that. Even the additional $2 million that would take us to 6 reduces what we're currently paying. I just wanted to emphasize that. So we will bring this back, and there will be the same information, and then we'll receive public comment on it and ask for your direction on what you want us to do.
So, Mr. Rogers, just to clarify, taking out additional funds for the landfill will save us money on that portion of it?
On the total, yes, sir.
Because I understand saving money on the other two, but when you look at the $5 million project, yes, if you go out 20 years and you extend the loan,
The point of all this green is to show that there's no red. That we're not increasing.
My understanding is it's lowering your debt service, but allowing you to borrow more money to finish the project quicker. I mean, yeah, it's still gonna cost money to borrow money, right? And
Right.
it's gonna extend it out longer.
Look, exactly. If you look at the bottom line on the right-hand side at the bottom of page 10, what's the total cost there? The net impact to cash flows, 2.2 million. Well, that's because we borrowed 2 million. We have to pay the 2 million back.
Lowering your monthly payment.
Yeah, we're lowering our monthly payments.
But you can afford a more expensive house.
Yes, sir.
So I guess what I would like to hear at the next meeting is what the extra 2 million might be spent on, because we haven't talked about that.
That is correct. I mean, we can talk about that. But because these are tax interest-free bonds, tax-exempt bonds, they're for a specific public purpose, and the purpose that we're writing them for, because we're replacing our transfer station funding with new transfer station funding, it's all going to be waste system related. So it'll be the largest portion, of course, is for the transfer station, and then compactors, recycle bins, over-the-road vehicles, anything we need to move that trash. And it's also possible for the board to construct new convenience centers with that additional funding.
Yeah, all that's reasonable. I just think we need to talk about it.
Sure.
And don't end up with gold bullets and transfer centers.
Of course.
Yeah, and my concern is, this loan would be paid off in, 34, 32. It would be paid off in 34, 13 years from now. And if you take on an additional debt, you will be paying debt on that long after we would have paid this off. So there's the years after 2034, we'll be paying additional debt that otherwise we wouldn't have.
Yes, but it's at a lower interest rate than you're currently paying.
And it was 7 years, right? Wasn't that the delta between where we'd be done in the 7 years?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyway.
So yeah, I mean, we're getting additional money. It'll take time to pay that off, but it's such a great rate to lock in now. This is an opportunity to seize.
I mean, we know that the county's gonna need capital improvements, so why not do them when we've got cheap money?
That's the point.
That's just my thinking.
Great discussion.
Okay, we will bring
Great
you.
discussion to have.
Absolutely.
I think figuring out where to spend COVID money is more fun.
We'll bring a list of projects to that so that the public can see what we're thinking anyway. Of course, you won't be committed to those, but the topic you are, the waste system.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your help. All right, moving on to old business, the appropriation funds for public works, the bathroom. Mr. Thacker, how are you?
Mr. Tucker, I'm just fine, thank you. Good afternoon. At the last board meeting, $300,000 was appropriated to bathrooms. Mr. Martin did the math and said bathrooms are about 90 grand apiece. At $300,000, we've either underfunded 4 or overfunded 3. What we're requesting is $60,000 additional to get the 4th bathroom. Those funds can come from CARES Act funding or the Parks Fund, which is funded at about $255,000. And Public Works is asking for appropriation from one of the 2 funds to complete all 4 bathrooms.
Before we get to that point, since I wasn't here last meeting, how do we know that a bathroom's 90,000?
We've gotten estimates from contractors.
Okay.
Oh, do you know what kind of bathrooms they are?
I can go into detail if you like.
They're more self-contained, you don't have to do a lot of work, they're all the same.
Okay.
So I have a question, Madam Chair. When this says CARES Act funding, is it CARES Act and we're gonna have to pull money from one person? Or is it from the
Yes.
savings?
Either or, yes. It's got to come from somewhere, and you've already allocated all the CARES Act money. So you would be drawing it from what you set aside in savings.
Okay.
If you're using CARES Act money.
Why wouldn't we just take it from fines and forfeiture?
I was
Well, you can.
I'd rather do
It's
that.
yours.
Are you talking about the 60,000?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But 300,000, if the original request was 5, right?
So the 300,000 has been taken care of with CARES Act money.
Right. So the 4 is Thrasher's, Mill Creek, Rose's Mill, and Seminole. I'm assuming that's the new proposed golf course.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would be fine with taking it out of the fine and forfeiture reserve. That's kind of what that money was set.
When's the last time the stone house, when was that replaced?
I don't have an answer for that, I don't know.
Have you looked at it?
I have. It's functional, it works.
Okay. I had a lot of complaints about stone house.
It's built with the lake.
Huh?
Built with the lake.
Yeah, I have a lot of complaints about stone house,
What in particular?
that it doesn't work and then it's dirty and then in wintertime it's just,
In the wintertime, we typically shut them down so the pipes don't freeze, but I can certainly look into it further.
okay. Yeah, You know, when it's cleanliness. Maybe we can fix that one next time around.
Yes,
And I would hope that, the director of parks has been involved, will be involved in the design and placement of this.
Sarah Lou has.
yes.
Yes, there's a tree across the Rose Mill Trail, 2 miles and 3/4.
As I mentioned yesterday, it was removed.
Awesome. Well, I slept in this morning.
All right, board members, we need a motion.
I move the board approve $60,000 to be used, from county fine and forfeiture reserve, complete the purchase and installation of 4 new parks and trails restrooms, which would be at Mill Creek, Thrashers, Roses Mill, and Seminole.
All right, motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Thacker.
Thank you.
New business. Mr.
Yes,
Lockerbie, are
ma'am.
you gonna,
Going to follow up
manage
on the
these?
same discussion that we had earlier on at the Service Authority meeting. So the Service Authority is proposing to issue what we call a new money bond for the Graham Creek Dam. We've been talking about upgrades to that dam for months and months and months at this point. Currently, the outer, what they call parameters of that bond are $6.5 million at 5.5%. We in fact expect it to issue at more like $5 million at substantially below 5.5%, but that's the outer limits. Is that correct, RT? Yeah. And that will be, so Service Authority Board adopted that resolution earlier today in order to make sure that the Service Authority gets a good interest rate. Because our Service Authority is a relatively small service authority and it's a 1-county service authority, VRA asks that the Board of Supervisors guarantee that in the event of something catastrophic happening to the service authority, the county will come in and make up the deficiency in the bonds. Now let me step back. Service authority is required by law to set its rates, fees, and charges such that it will pay all of its O&M costs, all of its debt costs, and have a cushion. So basically, if the service authority is following state law, which it better be, or I'm going to yell at the board, there shouldn't be a problem unless there is some type of massive catastrophe. However, if there is a massive catastrophe where Axa can't make its debt payments, the Board of Supervisors is making a moral obligation, which is not a legally binding obligation, it's more of a pinky swear, that it will make up the deficiency. More importantly, we're also allowing VRA to use what they call state aid and effect, which means that if Axa can't make the payment, we don't honor our moral obligation. And then finally, somebody's got to pay the bond. VRA can make the payment on our behalf. And then next time the General Assembly appropriates us funds for something, they can take it and pay themselves back before it comes to us. That's what this bond is set up to be. To my knowledge, it's however VRA bond Axa has taken in the last several decades as it's structured, but I figured I'd make sure you understood it.
And where does the 1% of our total taxable income come from? I mean, that's how much the service authority is allowed to use?
The service authority.
Okay.
The aggregate indebtedness of the service authority, and it's somewhere close to $30 million, is 1% of the total assessed value of taxable property.
Right, and their debt is what?
Oh, yeah. It's like a third of that.
And if it was close to that, we wouldn't be.
We might be having a more involved discussion. Yeah.
Any further questions? We need a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Supervisors adopt Resolution 2020-021-R and authorize the chair to execute the agreement as presented.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you.
And the second one is the Axa Refunding Bond, which is Axa is just refinancing existing bonds. This agreement reads almost exactly the same as the previous one. I say the previous one, the one that had been done 10 years ago when we initially issued these bonds, in 2012, sorry, 8 years ago.
Any questions?
Madam Chair, I move that the Board adopt Resolution 2020-022-R as presented.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Who's doing the actuarial service?
Okay, so last year when we changed our health insurance plan, we created a level of payment for our young retirees that equals what our employees pay. And some of us, myself, we're always learning, and I did not think we had a other post-employment benefit liability until I took a course. And because they're paying a blended rate with our employees, we have now created an other post-employment benefit liability that must go on our books, which means I have to hire an actuary to calculate that for the entire, for every employee. They have to look at their lifespan, when they can retire, who's already retired, who's on the plan, and they have to do it every year. So this won't go away. We eventually will have to fund this liability once we know what it is. And so I'm asking for you all to appropriate $7,000. I did not go out to bid for this service because VML and Banco already have a company on a, well, it's you don't have to go through procurement because they already have the contract. Cooperative. Thank you for the word. So I could use them and get it going because we need it done before the audit's finished, and it takes 8 to 10 weeks to do this. So I'm like pushing right up on my deadline. Do you have any questions? I know it's kind of new. It kind of works like the VRS. Lots of localities have OPEB benefits. We've never had them before because we've never offered a blended rate for retirees until this year. So I need $7,000 from your unobligated general fund balance for the actuarial services for fiscal year 2020.
Now, this is going to be a recurring call.
Yes, sir.
So you should submit it as part of the budget.
It will go in, yes, actually in your budget with the audit fees.
Well, I guess the question would be, do you want to continue to do that? Is that something we want to do?
I have a question. What is considered a young retiree? Is it a certain age, certain years of service?
Ms. Moore, can I speak to that? Under the LEO, Law Enforcement Officer Retirement, 25 years service and 50 years of age as law enforcement officer, you are eligible for retirement under the DRS system. I do not, I was retired under that system. I am not using the insurance here in the county, but that is the insurance program that would be offered to county staff that has the opportunity to retire at an earlier age when they're not eligible for Medicare. They would have that benefit available to them to provide health care if they so needed. They don't have a spouse or something to ask. That's what that benefit is for. And I strongly encourage that we keep that as a retainer, especially something as law enforcement officers look at. And if an individual spent 25 years in this county serving as a law enforcement officer, I think that's very minimal to be considered to provide that coverage to them if they become eligible for retirement.
Are there any other employees that are eligible to participate in growth?
Anyone that retires before.
Before they're
Anyone that retires before Medicare age or early. they can still qualify for it. So
But
if
that
if
is our
I,
option. The law requires for law enforcement officers, but the others, we have just added as a matter of county policy to be fair to the others.
so if I have an employee that's been with me, I have one that can retire in 3 years, but she won't be of age, like, I mean, probably has to be 10 years.
Of age being 65.
To be 65, probably more than 10 plus years. So she would be able to purchase that insurance at the same rate that she's currently paying for it.
So
But she'd have to pay the whole premium. She wouldn't get the supplement that we give current employees.
Well, so can you quantify how many employees or?
We have 6 on it right now.
Well, and if that number increases, the actuary service increases.
It's based on your total number of employees.
Well, I don't understand why can't you negotiate it in the contract with the insurance company? Why wouldn't they be included? Why are they put aside? Where you have to,
I don't understand your question.
you have to pay $7,000 for these 6 individuals for actuary service is what
For
I
all
understand.
200 and some employees. They have to look at all of the employees. We have 6 retirees on the plan, but it creates a liability for every employee that we have.
So, if I can try your question. So we have to do actuarial services because we have a sheriff's deputy that's utilizing it.
Anybody using it, yeah.
What if we had no one using it?
Still have to do it because the plan offers a blended rate.
So we would have to stop offering, if we didn't offer this benefit to the young retirees, we would not be offering a blended rate.
Correct. We've always had the benefit. We just changed to a blended rate last year. I've always had the retiree option, but they had to pay double what the employee paid. They had a completely separate rate from what the employees had.
So if I work for you right now and I pay $300 a month for insurance, right, as a county employee, and then tomorrow I retire, right, I have the option of still paying for my insurance until I get Medicare.
Correct, you just have to cover the employer portion too, yeah. So like if it's $450 for the employee on the plan and they're paying 80 and the county's paying the other 370, 380, anyway, whatever it is. And
So
they'll have to pay the whole 450.
Yeah, so why do we need an actuary?
Because they're allowed to pay at the employee rate. If they had a different rate that was only based on retirees, it wouldn't be blended.
With ours. Wouldn't be, they're combined in our pool.
So they're in our pool of insurance claims, so we get a rate based on everyone.
You know, one, I think that allowing our employees ability to stay on that, on the county insurance is good.
Oh, I agree.
Right?
Oh, that's great.
And, you know, because not, a lot of places don't do that ability.
They don't cover it.
But, I mean, they're paying for it. It's costing us, basically, we're paying $7,000 a year to offer that benefit to our retirement.
Until we know what we need to fund, yes. And I don't imagine it's going to be extremely high based on our percentage of retirees, but I don't know what that is until they calculate it.
Because are we paying this up front?
Yeah, you do it like the IRS. So there's an OPEB trust. Either we have to create one or we have to, and I will tell you that VACO has one that people are pooled in, but it works just like the IRS. They figure out how much they need because so many people are going to retire at whatever age, and this is how much your locality needs to put in. And so our actuary figures out how much we should be putting in order to cover this blended rate.
What's our total in the unobligated general fund?
Oh. What's more than that? Freed up, probably about 4.5, but I I actually just got to close the June books so I can start kind of separate things. We've had, with IT out, it was kind of hard to get, since we have to physically be in the building to do a backup, and they weren't here, so we had to, I literally closed like an hour before I came in here. Have not looked at anything.
Yeah, my question was just what, we would still have, why we were doing this, I've been on the board for.
Well, now
Too long,
it's just
but-
because
but I've
Gatsby
never
says
heard
we
of this.
have to, because we created it by making this rate the way it is.
Okay.
It's an audit thing.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Mr. Martin, I think it's a great thing, but it's just never cropped
It just
up.
kind of hit me in the face when I was taking that class.
Yeah, yeah.
We're always learning.
Madam Chair, I'll move that the board appropriate $7,000 from the unobligated general fund balance for fiscal year 2020 actuarial services into the fiscal year 2021 operating budget.
Motion on the floor by Ms. Moore, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. I was
Thank
hoping
y'all.
that you all would have finished all of this by now. All right, moving on to D, CARES Act. Oh, This is actually the appropriation, right?
Yes, ma'am, I have this one. So this is the appropriation of the $500,000 for that contract that the Broadband Authority Board directed us to enter into with CVEC. Now, the question that Mr. Martin asked, and that you all deferred to this meeting, was what about the $120,000 for lit communities? And so at this point, I need to apologize to the board for letting that slip through the cracks. Just as you described, I was focused on the fact that the board wanted $500,000 to be devoted toward broadband services. And so that's how the solicitation went out. That's how Lit Communities was advised to spend the $500,000. And I let slip through my mind the fact that we still owed them $120,000 to pay for their services. And so, I remember having that discussion that we really only had $380,000 to spend toward broadband, but we were trying to maximize that. I don't know why I let that go forward, but I did, and I should not have. And so, so that $120,000 needs to come from somewhere. So I just answered Mr. Martin's question, now that he's back and he missed the answer. But that $120,000 that we owe Lit Communities, Mr. Martin, is my fault that I did not keep track of that when we put out the solicitation for a $500,000 project.
I get that. What I didn't get was why the telework equipment of $134,800 didn't come out of the new 2.7 disbursement, and why it had to come out of the 2.2 savings.
Can I ask you all to look at this sheet that you've got in front of you?
Yep.
Okay, so what that sheet shows is that we had two disbursements, both for the same amount. If you look at the bottom line, you can see we got 2.7 million from each. And over on the far right on the bottom line is the total. We have $3.7 million to spend. And on the far right is how, in the two columns is where you've allocated it to date. Okay, this is what you've told us where to put this money. And if you look at the telework equipment, the 134.8, that you all told us to do that on the 4th of August. Okay, that was before we got the second appropriation. So, am I saying that right? That's when you designed it.
We had already created that agenda, and the intention was for it to come out of the first round. We did find out about the money, but we didn't have time. We got the money on like the 28th of July. We got notice on like the 28th. We'd already done the agenda for you all for the 4th. And so it was always staff's intention when they asked that it was coming out of the first round. And so when I created the spreadsheet, that's where I put it. because that's the understanding from the 4th that I had. We didn't get the money from, the second round until mid-August. We didn't even have the money. So I think it's just a miscommunication and that we created that agenda prior to the 4th at the same time that we were receiving the notification of the second tranche. We didn't even know about it until we had already created it and asked for that 134.8.
Does that answer your question?
So it's a miscommunication on our part in that the CARES Act is moving so fast. I can't even tell you that it just became a miscommunication and they all rolled in at the same time.
It is moving fast, but we've got like 25 minutes, so let's slow it down a minute and look at it and see where the money's going. That's what I would like to say.
So that's the only piece that you.
Well, I mean.
Can I take you through this form a little bit more? Just to help you understand where the money is?
If y'all, I mean, that's just me. I mean, I don't want to waste the board's time. You don't want to do it.
I mean, I just have a question that I think
Sure.
may help. So the salary switch dollars are the savings dollars that are documented in this chart.
Correct.
Okay, so what I've heard is that the 134.8 was taken out of,
So say,
yeah, that switch in essence, but the total is 2.757.
Okay, so each tranche was 2.757. So everything in each one of those columns has got to come to 2.7.
And that's true, right? And equals.
Correct.
Okay, so what has happened is our salary switch dollars have decreased by 134.8 and
They've
equals
been
1,089,000.
shifted around because the max amount that I could get out of fiscal year 2020 was the $1,054,000.
That's
In
the red number.
In the red. So I am still going to take 35,000 and some change and 1,051,000 from July 1st through September. I mean, through December. If you all do not pull from that number, you still have that
That amount to spend.
1,086,000 to, if you need to use it for something else, you can. We just gotta move it out of the
But
savings
just
line.
$1 million now, because I thought the salary switch was 2.2 million.
So there's $1 million in your general fund reserve as of June 30th, 2020. I can't go back and move that anywhere. You're gonna have to appropriate it from your general fund reserve if you wanna use that $1,054,000.
That's the red number on FY20 savings, that $1,054,000.
I will say that on August 4th, the 134,800 that we appropriated, I was not aware that that was coming out of the savings from the salary switch. I mean, it was a miscommunication, but I think I'm not the only member of the board that.
I mean, I agree.
I don't know how to explain it except that it's going to be shifting. Every time there's a new need that comes before you all, that's the only place I have to take it unless you take it from another line. And that's why I added the spent column in there, so you know what we've already taken out of those lines.
Okay, but if you go to the, August,
4th, 18th?
18th of June,
Yes,
and go to the allocation worksheet,
yes.
all right? CARES Act funding allocation, $5,514,828.
And I had not calculated the salary switch yet.
Well, you got savings FY20 and FY21, and 800,000 in FY2020 and 1.4 in 2021, it's 2.2, right?
That was an estimate.
I literally was estimating those numbers until I actually sat for 2 days to add up the salaries of every public safety employee and every deputy that qualified and their benefits to get the number that I now have on the sheet, the 1,054,000. It was a guess.
All right, I'm still lost. A million, 2.2, I understand that's an estimate, but to drop down to 1,054,000, that's a long drop, right?
Well, there's there's another million, hold on. There's another million under the other column.
They've already shifted $1 million into our savings account.
Okay, so there's 2,054,000.
There's 2 million $105,305.
Okay, which subtracted from 5 million, whatever it is, 3 million some bucks, right?
Mhm.
Okay, and what I thought the board had agreed to do out of all of this was we have to give the town their funding, which is roughly 190 times 2, right? So almost $400,000. The public safety shelter was 80, the Monroe hot water heater was 3,500, small business grants, 300, nonprofit grants 200, duct cleaning 200, broadband 500, telework equipment 130, 800. Then you've got savings 1,089,000 and miscellaneous COVID expenses 58,900. That was the first round, right?
Correct.
Disbursement 2, we said another 150,000 small business grants. And then we said the HVAC for the health department was 100,000. Other HVAC projects was 94. There was savings, I guess this is the salary, 1,051,000. Schools 450. Miscellaneous COVID expenses 91,100. Public safety supplies and equipment 330, right? And park restrooms going to be 4.
Yeah, I had to correct that.
300,000, right?
Yes, sir.
So that's where it's going. That's where we've said it's going.
So you can change any of that. The only thing you can't change are the numbers in red. That money's already been spent.
Yeah, I mean, I get that.
So
yeah,
you can move it, any of it, around any way that you'd like.
I get that. Yeah, my understanding is that you as a county administrator put it out to your departments and got requests in, right? And everybody submitted their requests, and we sat there and we discussed it. And Mr. Hopkins, your request was on it last time, I believe. I looked at it.
Yes, but you all did not fund.
Correct. So what I'm not comfortable with and really don't want to spend time on is every meeting, somebody comes back to us and say, oh, well, we really want you to reconsider this, but you haven't spent it yet, right? I mean, how many times do you want us to debate?
So you're saying done is done. We put it out there, everybody got plenty of opportunity, we're done.
I would say so.
I'm with you.
Can we just verify, Mr. Rogers, that it went out to all departments, like?
It did.
And they had deadlines to respond?
And I asked for one, yes, ma'am, and everybody looked at it when they could, I guess, or understood it at different times and places, and the ideas come rolling in. And, I don't feel like I have the authority to say no. That's your job. And so, if the sheriff wants more cars, or the service authority wants more renovations, or you want to add more broadband projects, you can move your money around to do that. I'm not taking it upon myself to tell the others, especially constitutionals, that no, they can't come and ask for more, because you haven't spent it all yet, and you do have the authority to shift it. And we are trying to come in under on many of these costs as we can. They're all estimates.
I understand, but in our minds, at least in my people mind, we have said this is where we're going to spend.
That is correct.
Kind of like, this is our budget for it. This is where it's going.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
And the only thing is, if stuff comes in lower, we're gonna have to get creative. But, and I do get requests, and I could be the one coming back to you if there are PPE has to be continued to be purchased until this is over.
So when are you going to have to start spending this money?
Oh, it's out there, it's just, like, Mr. Prophet has the HVAC stuff out to bid.
Yeah.
So now that we've appropriated this, you can go out and start signing contracts, doing whatever.
Yeah, they're signing them, we just gotta get through the procurement process. I gotta tell you, we got a lot more than just this pot. I now have 7 CARES Act pots to keep up with. So,
You got funding to do it.
well, sometimes just like the OPEB, things get, Archie wasn't kidding when sometimes it's the cart before the horse because it's moving so fast.
I mean, I understand the sheriff report, and I would love to give him 2 new vehicles, whatever, right? But where are we going? So we've already said, you know, we're gonna take that to public safety. We've already told them we're gonna, you know, $330,000 to buy an ambulance, supplements, and all this other stuff, right? They've already gone out and started looking at this.
I wouldn't look to take it from any line that you all had given it to already, that directed it towards. The only place that in my mind that you would take it from would be your savings line.
Right, which I'm not sure, and I'm not sure we're ready to do that yet until, at least me, until the communities comes back and says, you know, here's your broadband plan. Right.
That's right. I assume that we will, whatever money is left in savings that hasn't been devoted to something else that you thought was important will be available for broadband unless you don't want to spend it on that. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're ready to discuss what's timeline where we're going to spend the 2.2.
Well, that's not in front of you at the moment.
Well, I'm
right, but it seems like everybody is.
Let me just put this out there because the sheriff is not here now. And that he does not have any vehicles to take off the road if he has a COVID case in a vehicle and it has to be cleaned. So he'll, in essence, I guess, if he doesn't have vehicles, he will take that deputy off the road until his vehicle is cleaned, which can take a couple days.
What?
Yes.
They take people to the hospital with COVID, they go there, they spray it down, they turn around, they're back on the road. Am I wrong?
30, 45 minutes with the system we developed.
So
he told me he had to take it off the road.
If you're telling me you gotta buy a car for that, no. I mean, they're carrying people to the hospital with COVID, right? And Lord knows what else. And they came up with their own little plan.
I'm giving you the explanation that this Sheriff Fire gave me.
You on that one.
Okay, we'll just sit on it for a while. I'll just ask him to come back and talk to you all.
So.
Can we get resolution on this?
Yes, ma'am. So what we need to do is we need to appropriate $500,000 to the Broadband Authority so that they can pay for the contract that they have.
You need $620,000?
Well, 120 stays with the county because that's the county's contract. It's not, I believe that's a Broadband Authority contract, is it? With Lit?
The one with Lit is a county board.
Right, so that doesn't go, so that's a separate.
Isn't it cleaner if we've got to do 2? I mean, we got to do the 500,000 for broadband.
500,000 for broadband to the Broadband Authority, and $120,000 we need to shift in here. I'm suggesting it come from the savings section to cover the Lit Communities contract.
I will make a motion. I move the board approve an appropriation amount of $500,000 to the Broadband Authority for the purpose of paying the work proposed on the contract or contracts awarded during the Broadband Authority meeting. Motion's on the floor. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion's approved.
I have a question.
What's your question?
Well, the 120,000 that we have to appropriate to Lit, is that gonna be, the total amount for their community-wide development plan, or are we gonna have to pay more money for that?
That's the total amount for the final plan.
All right, the next item of business is the road name revision, which is.
And so that money then, because it hasn't been allocated in here, we will draw from the savings from FY 2021. Is that okay with the board?
You mean from the?
We have to find a place on this listing for that $120,000 to come from. That's where I'm proposing and I'm suggesting that it come from, so that we not reduce any of the other assignments that the board has made.
I prefer it not from another money tree.
And the only other tree we have is the unobligated general fund.
Well, I think you made a good suggestion.
All right, we need a motion to that effect.
Please.
Mr. Martin?
Make a motion to take the $120,000 from the FY 2021 savings to be spent on the
community's contract.
Make sure that's memorialized
Yes, ma'am.
properly.
Regina's got it.
Okay. All right, motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Road name revision.
Okay, the Braun duo is here. This may be the easiest item on your list, and I shouldn't have said that because it always jinxes when you say that. But Cynthia Henderson and Douglas Broadfoot, they submitted a letter to Amherst County requesting that their road be renamed. Currently it's named Morecambe Drive. This letter is to request a renaming to Morecambe Place. The road is a state-maintained road, which is State Route 814. It connects Stapleton Road and Early Farm Road with only 2 residences on Morecambe Drive. So both of those folks are requesting this road name change, which is in compliance with our ordinance. We consulted with VDOT. VDOT is okay with the road name change. The requesters have been in contact with this Mr. Bryant, Director of Public Safety, and the requesters will also pay for any costs that are associated with changing the road name sign. They've agreed to do that as well. The recommended motion is that the board rename Morecambe Drive to Morecambe Place. There's a letter submitted in your packet that explains the reasons from the applicant, and they are here tonight if you have questions specific to them.
Board members, are there any questions?
So both, there's 2 homes on.
Correct.
And both are in agreement.
Correct.
Madam Chair, I move that the board rename Morecambe Drive to Morecambe Place.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you, Brian. You have to pay it for it.
Anderson Road.
All right, Mr. Rogers.
The next item, ma'am, is just an update for the board to let you know of upcoming vacancies in the coming quarter. So there's 1 seat on the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Development Board. That's just for your information.
Okay.
And for your recruitment efforts for those that want to. She's District 4.
Is she, I guess it's too early for her to vindicate it if she wants to serve again.
Kind of is. We usually pursue that about 30 days out.
All right. Anything else?
On that, no, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Lockerbie?
I have nothing to add. I'm getting a little hoarse from how much I talked already.
All right, liaison committee reports, that was for information only, correct, Mr. Rogers?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'd also like to suggest with regard to the departmental reports, if you want to defer the human resources presentation to later, in the interest of time, that would be acceptable.
Is that gonna disappoint you? Okay. All right. All right, then, board members, y'all okay with that? We'll move it to the next meeting. Thank you.
The next item, ma'am, is the update that we promised the board with what's happening with our revenue. At the time you approved our current year budget, we put a lot of items on hold. And we told you we wouldn't purchase any of the items on the supplemental list until we came back and reported where our revenue streams stood. So Ms. Wilkins will do that.
Any questions?
Okay. Oh.
No. Board members have any questions? All right, and then I like that calendar.
You like the calendar?
Yeah.
Work for you? With the revenue update, I just want to point out that we came out above what we had projected for the year, and that sales tax and meals tax are pretty much in line with what we estimated. So I'm looking for a little bit of direction from you guys. I'd like to bring back some adjustments to the fiscal year 2021 budget for some of these line items that we reduced
Yeah, because that's what
in
we
anticipation
said.
of it being a really huge drop off, and it was not.
Right, and we said, come back when you know.
Okay, so I know, and I'm showing you through June. I want to, and if you're okay, I'm gonna come back with, the increase in the recurring revenues, and you all have some thinking to do about your supplemental projects that were recurring that did not get funded. I had included the list of the supplementals, and then I realized I didn't take all the HVACs off. So while you're looking at it, first I would ask that you guys give us permission to go ahead and move forward with the ones that you approved, but we put the brakes on until now. We came out of June fine, and I firmly believe we're headed in the right direction further on. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 projects that would need to be, for you all to say, yes, go on and do them now. Because you appropriated them, we just put the brakes on and didn't do them.
And just for the record, which 8 are they?
The file server, the stretcher, the fire alarm, Madison Heights Library, the public safety vehicle, the voting machine, the poll books, the election officials, and the inspection. You've already told them to go ahead with the inspection. So those are the ones that we're just kind of sitting on waiting to do, and we just want you all to say, yeah, take the break off and go ahead and do those for you.
Board members, which pleasure. I mean, that was our direction, to sit back and get the numbers and then before they went forward, but we did appropriate it.
You're right.
All right, you need a motion, is guidance enough?
No, we were holding.
We were just
guidance,
holding on
so if
So we're
you're ready,
we're
we'll
telling
go
you to
forward.
move, we're telling you to move forward.
We'll
Okay.
obtain these things.
Okay.
So, and then I've also included the CIP for you all to think about, because we did put the brakes on the CIP too and pushed a whole lot of stuff out to the next year, thinking we wouldn't have the cash flow. I would like you to consider if you want to move some of them from fiscal year 2022 back into 2021 in the priority that they were given. And I'm not looking for a decision.
When do you need an answer?
I think maybe, we can talk about it at the September meeting, let you guys look at it and think about it. I will have a general fund availability report hopefully on that meeting.
But I would need $1 now.
Well, so normally, in the past, the board has spent anywhere between $1 million and $1.5 million on capital every year.
Right.
We backed off to less than 500,000.
So we wouldn't have to raise taxes.
That has nothing to do with CIP.
Yeah, it did have something to do with it, because you were,
It's 2 different buckets.
there was one, you recommended to take 1 cent of that tax increase and put it into a fund to fund the capital improvements.
That's for 5 years out.
But anyway, it was part of it.
That was to put some recurring revenue into
That
project.
fund, but
Exactly.
But this is spending the one-time money that you have.
this is not spending recurring.
None of this is recurring.
I get how that works, but if you don't have one-time money to spend,
I
if
understand
you
that.
spend it all, then
So,
are you asking us to put them all back?
no. I'm actually asking you to really put that first one back. Because I can tell you that we hit a
The
very,
Madison Heights Master Plan?
no.
That's right.
Software. Do not skip that first line. So let me explain a couple things that have come to light with the pandemic. Is that we really struggled to get payroll and payables out with IT out for 2 weeks. We are strapped by paper. If HR went out, they would not be able to do their piece of payroll because it's paper. It's very paper driven, and we currently have they're in the process of getting computers, but we still don't have the ability to process from home. So if my staff goes out with COVID, like IT had to go out, I have a problem. There's nobody else to do payroll. I can't do it from home. I've done payroll before on the cloud from the beach, but we don't have that capability.
And you just heard her talk about 2 days of sitting calculating pay and benefits to get that number.
Yeah.
That's because Bright can't do it.
It has definitely brought some things to light on both ends. Like just today, I had to stop everyone in my office from doing anything in order to close the books for almost yesterday and today until I got it closed. Because you can't have any open batches when you go to close. And in order to keep payables, it takes 3 days, normally, 2 to 3 days for Donna to do all that.
So you have to, that's lost productivity every single month?
Every single month, every week.
I didn't know that other people couldn't work when you were trying to close books. I had no idea of that.
Well, that, and it takes so long to do the payables and stuff. We have a week-and-a-half turnaround. They turn them in on a Wednesday, and they get the check the following Friday. Jeez. Because we have to keep everything for ourselves and for the schools.
Madam Chair.
So that is my biggest push, is to get at least that back on your radar.
Mr. Ayers?
I think we supposedly implemented a committee to look at this, and I definitely think that our director of IT should be here with input on this before we make any decisions. But I know there was a committee put together to review this and give us some guidance and direction on this, and I think we need to make sure that we listen
Well,
to
the
them.
committee did give us some direction.
They're not gonna put it out until they know they have the money.
Yeah.
Because we're not gonna make the vendors mad.
Yeah, that was, they got an opinion, Mr. Ayers.
We are not reconvening until we have the money.
And I think we need to know, this is the first year, what are we looking at in years to come as far as support for these programs? I think we need to know the full picture, not a piece of it.
Well, it's 1.2 million over
3 years. And then what are we looking at support from that on, and what we select? I mean,
So I'd like to, I think you make very good points. I'd like to know, okay, how much money is available to spend on CIP without spending every reset. I'd like to know, you got an Amherst medic unit replacement number 3, but we just went out and bought, or we just funded a medic unit, right? So does that still need to be in there? So I'm getting that, so it's kind of a revised. Has COVID changed anything? COVID funding? Yes.
With regard to the capital.
Like the ambulance.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about having more money available for CIP, you have at least $1 million that's gone into your general fund.
No, I know that, but I guess my main question is, do we still need a ambulance?
Oh, you need it for the number 3?
Yes.
Well, that's a conversation for Mr. Bryant and I at some point. Oh, there he is. What's over there?
That was not programmed for this year originally. No, that was programmed out.
What we did is we moved some of the items from the current year into the next year. But there were already some items in the next year that are part of the program.
So maybe I ask what you guys think about
One
that.
of the things that we were talking about with the tobacco tax money, I know that I wanted to see that money go dedicated to the CIP. That's where I want to see it go. For a future fund, whatever you want to call it. And I would like to see, I mean, I know that this thing has a big price tag, but we can't keep on going like this. Eventually, we got to bite the bullet and give these people the tools that they need to do their job.
And allow me to remind the board that that number there is our estimate based upon the highest cost program that we're aware of out there. That doesn't mean we're gonna select that program, and until we commit to buy something, then we can't go out to bid and get actual costs and make the actual selection. So, our goal is not to spend $400,000 over 3 years. That's the worst case scenario. As in all of these things in here, we always try to come in as far as we can get.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. At some point, we're just gonna have to do the software. As expensive as it is. Some of the things that I think we need to take a look at, I know I specifically requested that Director Brian go back and talk to the Emergency Services Council and coming up with a adequate apparatus replacement, because the CIP was built off of data that's probably 6 years old or older. And the way this is laid out is not accurate or equitable for all the departments in the county. So I'd like to hear that report when we move forward with this. We can't build a CIP on inaccurate information.
That's correct. This is the CIP that you built before and the priorities that you gave, everything based upon the information when it was presented. We can revisit it as often as you like, and I'll have Sam come in with that plan. We'll come in back with the latest unobligated general fund report and how much money is available. That's the money that is spread out over the future years. The unobligated general fund. This is where we spread it out and how we would use it. And as you alluded, ma'am, the problem that we have is that that money does not have a source of recurring revenue to replace it. So if we have that in place, then we will have solved what I believe is the biggest problem that the county has, and that is preparing for the future. So, but yes, we can revisit all of this as many times as you'd like, and you can certainly reprioritize it at any time. This is simply the priority that you've left it with, and then the Bright software has been number one for at least 2 years, if not 3 now. So we will bring that additional information back.
Any further questions? Okay. Anything else? I think everything else is self-explanatory.
Budget calendar, yeah. So long as, unless anybody has any objections.
Unless there's something you don't like.
Vacations you've got set up already, or
Do you need anything else from us when we move to citizens' comment?
no, ma'am.
All right, we'll now open the meeting to citizen comment. Is there anyone here wishing to speak? Seeing and hearing none, we'll close citizen comment, move on to matters of members of the board. Mr. Ayers?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Martin?
No.
Mr. Pugh?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Moore?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Tucker? Nope. All right, so motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion on the floor by Ms. Moore to adjourn. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Meeting's adjourned.
I have to